For the MSNBC Doc Block is all new, with premieres of the most compelling documentaries on TV. New to MSNBC, from Dick Wolf, the creator of Law & Order. Courtroom drama so intense, it could only be real.
You're a punk.
New internet predators face justice, and NBC's Chris Hansen.
I guess I'm probably not the surprise you expected, am I?
Plus, all new lockups. December, MSNBC Doc Blocks. All new, all month.
Good afternoon, I'm Chris Matthews, and welcome to a special edition of Hardball. Today, President Bush, in a very surprise move, announced the resignation of Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld.
Don Rumsfeld is a patriot who served our country with honor and distinction. He is a trusted advisor and a friend, and I'm deeply grateful to his service to our country. I've asked Bob Gates to serve as the Secretary of Defense.
Adding to the excitement, the president plans to replace Rumsfeld with his father's CIA director, Robert Gates. The president did so after overruling Vice President Dick Cheney, who wanted to keep Rumsfeld, and rejected the notion of bringing in Gates, who is not an ideologue like so many of the administration people have been at the Defense Department and in the Vice President's office. In 30 minutes, we'll have live coverage of President Bush, Don Rumsfeld, and Robert Gates from the Oval Office. So that will be an interesting jamboree. Let's get right to it with retired Army General Barry McCaffrey, who's an NBC News analyst, and NBC counterterrorism analyst Roger Cressy. General McCaffrey, your view of the decision that was made, not just the new guy, but the old guy. What do you think of it?
Well, I'm very impressed that the president thought through this prior to the election, came up with a spectacular nomination. Bob Gates, a career professional, he is good news for U.S. national security thinking. He'll be enormously respected by the armed forces. So it's a very positive step forward. I think, Secretary Rumsfeld is a patriot, is dedicated, but his misjudgments got the country and the armed forces in a terrible situation. So we got to move forward. 24,000 killed and wounded, $300 billion of expenditures. The war's going the wrong way. Now we need pragmatic new thinking.
There's been a powerful vortex involving the vice president, who was selected by the president as vice president in a committee that he headed. And then he made the major decision to bring in Cheney. The president went along, bring in Rumsfeld. The president went along with that. Well, the breaking up of this team of Cheney and Rumsfeld over the objections of Cheney really changed U.S. policy.
Oh, yeah. I think, this fellow Bob Gates is a youthful 62. He's a confidant of Secretary Rice. Rumsfeld's 74. Bob Gates knows the people in the White House, Josh Bolten, Steve Hadley. The people in the uniform admire him and have known him for years. He's been out in academia, had a time to, refresh his thinking. This is absolutely positive news.
Let me ask you about another aspect of the president's press conference today. He said that he feels the responsibility, has the responsibility of dealing with the new commission headed by James A. Baker and Lee Hamilton. Did that surprise you how strongly he embraced his requirement to meet with them and perhaps develop a new policy with them?
Yeah, I was very encouraged, to be honest, very impressed. The fact that he stressed that he arrived at these conclusions on his own. Again, in the background of this, Josh Bolten, Steve Hadley, Dr. Rice, I think they've been talking about this in a very serious manner for the last 6 months. He's got 2 years left in office. The judgment of history will be unkind if Iraq comes apart, if we're forced into withdrawal, if it unwinds. And that's where it's headed right now. So, again, I think this is positive. I'm impressed and encouraged by these announcements. What
new elements of policy will Mr. Gates bring in as defense chief in Iraq?
Well, first of all, he understands the international community, and he's got admirers worldwide. He's been dealing with foreign intelligence services, foreign ministers, defense ministers. He's a no-nonsense guy. Part of the problem, Chris, has been, look, Secretary Rumsfeld and people like Cambone and Doug Feith came in. They had a theoretical view of the world, of a new form of warfare. It didn't match reality. So we ended up in this terrible situation with a bunch of people had told him, don't go this route. Now you're going to find a guy like Bob Gates, who's just been around a long time and is used to listening to people. So, again, I think if there hadn't been, even with the new optics, without new optics in place, you couldn't get beyond the Pentagon justifying their past egregious misjudgments. Now we've freed ourselves up. The international community will be in a much more confident way of looking at what we're about to do.
Let's bring in Roger Cressy now at NBC headquarters down in Washington. Roger, your view on this sort of a cabinet shuffle, a shuffle of the war cabinet, if you will, by pushing, straight arming the vice president out of the way. The vice president went hunting the other day. The president decided to pick a new defense chief and pick someone. Not only did he knock out someone that Cheney likes and adores as a partner, Rumsfeld, but he brought in somebody Rumsfeld doesn't like because he's a pragmatist.
Well, it tells you the gravity of the situation the White House is facing, Chris. I mean, the only thing that I find ironic is that had he fired Rumsfeld a week and a half or 2 weeks ago and put Gates in, there's every possibility the Senate probably would have stayed Republican, because that would have been such an important signal to send to the American electorate. But that said, I think the timing may have surprised some people, but as General McCaffrey said, it's a smart choice for a number of reasons. Bob Gates is a master bureaucratic practitioner. He was Deputy National Security Advisor under General Brent Scowcroft, and people who were in that administration will tell you he ran the interagency process better than anybody. So what you've done is you not only removed Rumsfeld as this symbol of all that's gone wrong in Iraq, but you removed a chief obstructionist in the interagency process. And I'll tell you who's going to benefit the most out of this is going to be Steve Hadley, the National Security Advisor, because Gates will work in the interagency. He will recognize the National Security Council and its staff for the role that they have, and he will be more of an ally, and certainly much better than how Rumsfeld has been in the interagency.
Let me go back to General McCaffrey. How will this go down with the troops in the field?
Well, I think day to day, their concern today will be there was a rejection of the war strategy. I wonder what that means to us. We shed our blood. They believe in the mission. They think it's achievable with the right leadership and resources. They're going to be worried not about Gates, not about the loss of Rumsfeld, but what does the election mean? Now, look, they're going to do their job. They're focused on the mission at hand. It's incredibly dangerous. We lose a battalion a month killed and wounded in combat in Iraq. This is dangerous work. So, but I think that all the senior leadership who know Bob Gates and admire him, this is a great signal that we're going to be serious in purpose and that they'll listen to expert leadership on the ground. Khalilzad in Iraq is a terrific ambassador. Abizaid understands what's going on. Now we'll have a more collective decision-making process in Washington.
Back in the Vietnam War, as you know so well, General McCaffrey, you fought that war. McNamara was relieved and sent over to the World Bank, where Wolfowitz ended up in this administration, and was replaced by a man who was a deal maker, Clark Clifford, a Washington lawyer, who was basically brought in to sort of overhaul the process of the war, but ended up getting rid of the war, basically, saying we're not going to fight this war. Is there a fear among maybe the high-ranking older officers who know some of this history that this could be happening again?
Well, I don't think Bob Gates as a nomination for DSECDEF signals we're going to cut and run. I don't believe that. I think this guy will come in. He'll take 6 months to listen intently to what people are telling him, the international community, inside the armed forces. Then he'll try and work with the president. And this, by the way, Dr. Wright is going to play a huge role in all this. But they're going to go over to what will undoubtedly be a Democratic-controlled House and Senate, and they're going to have to tell the Democrats, look, 24 months is too long to let us twist in the wind. You got to help. Come up with ideas, resource the war. We've got to make this thing look right. So, again, I roll into this with a tremendous feeling of enhanced confidence at this announcement.
Roger, what stymies the public and the press trying to understand this war is that the president continues to argue, and we don't know how faithfully to the truth he is, but he continues to argue that his generals are fully within their rights, and it's one of their duties to let him know if they're short of forces, that they need to have an increase in the force level over their troops. And yet we wonder at that. We wonder if there's not a circular setup here whereby they're told, you better not ask for more than what you got or you won't be in charge long. Do you think this new Secretary of Defense situation will liberate the commanders in the field to say what they really believe?
Well, that's one of the great unanswered questions, Chris, through Rumsfeld's tenure is, was he constantly obstructing the generals from providing the right type of advice to the White House? Because Rumsfeld has always said the chain of command runs through him to the president. Or, in fact, were the generals not giving the type of recommendations to Rumsfeld that they thought they should, just because of the way Rumsfeld was? I think now that he's out of the way, we're going to find out the answer to that question. And there's one school of thought that says we need more troops there. There's another school of thought that that says we're ending up in Iraq right now is we're going to end up with a policy of containment ultimately, that we're ultimately going to have to contain Iraq, much like we did in the 1990s, albeit for different reasons. So we're going to see very shortly into Bob Gates' tenure at the Pentagon what direction the military wants to go, because they really do have an opportunity here to lay out clearly and concisely, with Rumsfeld gone, what they want to do and get a full vetting as a result.
Your thoughts on that very question, General, about the ability of our military men over there who lead our forces and know the situation as well as anyone could, are they getting an honest access to the president's ear?
Well, I think going into the war, the problem of lack of military force was at the execution of the initial intervention. We went in there with totally inadequate ground combat power and with no thought given to what happens when we knock over the 7 Republican Guard divisions. That was the problem. During that period, Rick Shinseki in the White House spoke up and said, this is under-resourced. There's no question that was on the table, and others, to include me, had talked about inadequate force structure going into the war. The answer today is not more troops. We are going to leave Iraq substantially in the coming 24 to 36 months. So I don't think George Casey or Abizaid will bang away on Bob Gates and say, give us 4 more divisions. They're not there, and that's not the answer. We got to resource the Iraqi security forces. We got to open a peace dialogue. Damascus, Tehran, the Turks, and probably most importantly, at some point here, we got to try and force the Shia-dominated government into opening a dialogue with internal to their own community. 23 militias, Chris, inside Baghdad alone. So they got to sort out the leadership function in that faction and then include in some manner the Sunni insurgency, which rages unabated in Anbar province.
General Barry McAfee, Roger Cressy, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. We'll talk about this with our panel when we come back. And later, Pennsylvania Congressman Jack Murtha. He's planning to run for majority leader. In fact, he's already running against Steny Hoyer to be the #1 man out there fighting for the Democratic agenda on the House floor. You're watching Hardball on MSNBC.
MSNBC's Keith Olbermann is never afraid to call it like he sees it.
Full responsibility for 9/11 is obviously shared by 3 administrations.
And whether that reminds you of the golden age of journalism or its future, one thing is certain. When Keith talks, people listen. Keith Olbermann's special comment, Countdown, and that's only on MSNBC.
Be brilliant with E-Trade's exclusive intelligent lending optimizer. Be insightful and explore multiple lending possibilities in seconds. Be in command and make sure you get the most value of every dollar you borrow. In other words, be master of your domain.
Oh, there's my earring.
The intelligent lending optimizer. Only at E-Trade.
Introducing Men's Rogaine Foam, the first and only foam that regrows hair. Easy to use, dries quickly. It could be the fastest part of your routine. New Men's Rogaine Foam. Use it or lose it.
Sonicare is a part of good overall health. Its patented technology creates dynamic cleaning action, getting deep between the teeth and along the gum line. Sonicare. Help take care of your body.
Ah, softer. Introducing new Charmin Ultra. It's not just new, it's better. It's softer. So you'll want more. But so absorbent, you can use less. You can use less because it's more absorbent than the regular quilted brand. Now softer than before, less is even more. Try new Charmin Ultra, best for bare bottoms. Charmin.
If you're 50 or over, here's good news. Now AARP offers more exclusive member benefits than ever before, including big savings at 26 hotel chains, Pearl Vision, Avis, AOL, and many others.
I love discounts.
You also get a magazine, monthly bulletin, and more.
It's a good way to stay really informed on issues that matter to people in my age group.
Now for a limited time, your first year is just $9.95, and your spouse joins free. To join, call 1-800-973-1903. Do it now.
Ever get the feeling your advertising is reaching the wrong people? Comcast Spotlight can help. With dozens of networks to choose from, you can run your message only on the shows your customers are watching. You can even target your message geographically to reach your customers where they live. Comcast Spotlight. TV advertising without the waste.
For more information, call our Portland office.
I do understand where the the heart of the people. I understand they're frustrated. I am too, as I said the other day. I wish this had gone faster. So does Secretary Rumsfeld. But the reality is that it's a tough fight, and we're going to win the fight.
Welcome back to Harbor. We're waiting for President Bush, Defense Secretary Rumsfeld, and the man the president has named as his replacement, Robert Gates. They'll be in the Oval Office at the bottom of the hour. Let's bring in our panel, MSNBC's Chief Washington Correspondent Nora O'Donnell, Newsweek's Howard Feynman, and Congressional Quarterly's Craig Crawford. Nora, two parts to today's story. The first part was the president recognizing that he'd taken a thumping, that he has to make big changes. He announced the resignation of Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld. He announced the replacement of Rumsfeld with a person nowhere near as committed, it seems, to the ideology of this administration, a man who's from the realist school of foreign policy, did all this apparently over the objections of the vice president, the most hard-nosed of all the administration hawks, and a lot of news in that.
Well, yes, you just summarized it all. Very well. I mean, this is a stunning development, and it is a move by the White House that has been underway for several days, we are told. This was discussed between the political people and Vice President Cheney, that there was a disagreement, that the White House Chief of Staff, Josh Bolten, had suggested that they get it done. Vice President Cheney resisted that and wanted Rumsfeld to say. Ultimately, the political people and the president's current Chief of Staff won out. What's noteworthy is what's changed now, as opposed to the past 3 years when we know from Woodward's reporting that there were multiple people that had called for or had suggested to the president that Rumsfeld resign. According to Woodward, Laura Bush had suggested it. Andy Card had suggested it twice to the president. General Abizaid had said that he doesn't remain the confidence of many people anymore. All of that, yet something has changed in the last several weeks for them to overrule Vice President Cheney. And as you pointed out, it suggests that the era of the ideologues is over. And what we know about Robert Gates, who served under Brent Scowcroft in the Ford administration in the National Security Council, and then, of course, in the 41's administration, is that he is close to 41. He's been advising the president for some time. Remember, Gates was offered the job of D&I director.
Right.
And Negroponte was choice number 2. So Gates didn't take that job. He's currently president of Texas A&M, so he's been a Texas guy. But that he is well-liked and trusted because they've offered him a job before, and they clearly went back to him. Another, I think, key point is that he's close to the Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, and I think this suggests a further augmentation of her role, her power, under George W. Bush.
One of the people, Howard, who really pushed for this war in Iraq, I'm thinking of the people in journalism, our colleagues, people like Bill Kristol, Charles Krauthammer, the people who really believe in this war. Are they looking at this as, oh my God, Bush is going, what did Margaret Thatcher say to his father would have done? Going soft, something like
wobbly.
That. Going wobbly on us. Do you think they're saying that now? They're real hawks.
I don't know, but I would imagine they have the sense of an era shifting here. I've already called to reserve my seat at the press table for the Gates confirmation hearings because that's where the discussion, I think, depending on timing of things, is going to begin. And by the way, we don't know whether a Democrat is going to be in charge of the committee or a Republican. Right. It's probably going to be a Democrat in the end, the way things are going. It's probably, I don't want to prejudge Virginia, but it's probably going to end up that way.
Who is the ranking Democrat?
So, well, I think it would be Carl Levin,
who's been a real critic of the war.
Real critic of the war. So right away you see Carl Levin of Michigan and you see Gates sitting there. Do the Democrats use that? Are they tempted to use that? Do they want to use that as an opportunity to begin their side of the argument of how we got into the war, why are we there, can we possibly win it? What's the definition of victory? Who's making money off it? You know what I mean? How much do they want to look at Gates, or how much do they want to give George W. Bush credit for a new beginning here? That's the question.
No, one piece of information Andrea Mitchell got earlier, she said she had talked to Joe Biden, who voted against Gates in his confirmation for CIA director, and he is now saying he would vote for Gates here. So I think you're right, though. I think it'd be fascinating to see if they use it as a form to extract concessions.
Right.
My guess is, though, this buys Democrats time
Exactly.
not to put their own plan on the table.
Which they're not eager to do.
Which they don't want to do anyway.
Right.
So they can sit back and say, okay, well, we support this decision. We want to see how it goes, and then they can move on to minimum wage and student loan and Medicare and all things they'd rather talk about.
I love your tonal changes the way you do that.
easy stuff.
The sense of engagement is much stronger on those fronts than it is on the war. Democrats do not truly wish to engage in the war-making role.
Your interview yesterday with Howard Dean made that very clear when you were trying to get him to say what Democrats would do about Iraq, and he didn't have anything to say.
I felt that he was representing the positioning of the party, which is different than policy making. Simply positioning it as a party that's not cut and run. But what is it affirmatively standing for? That wasn't clear.
They haven't said. And by the way, Rahm Emanuel was saying last night, we're going to let the Baker, we want to see what's in the Baker Commission. Everybody is taking safe haven or looking for safe haven in that Baker Commission report.
So all these foot soldiers are running along behind the tank. And that's the Baker the Baker Hamilton tank. But suppose the tank isn't manned. Suppose there's really no clear-cut direction to run in when these senior citizens running that takeover.
I don't think there's going to be.
Who are the senior citizens?
I'm talking about Jim Baker. These are eminent screezes.
Gates
These are the emeritus public officials of our time, going back 20 years.
Gates is a youthful 62, don't forget.
I accept that and endure that.
Yes,
but I think the question here is, what is there to follow here? Is there a policy-making apparatus coming along to save us all? It's going to save the Democrats from the need to have to come up with a plan of their own and save the president from a plan that's just been rejected by the American people.
Well, what the Democrats suggested today in praising that the president fired Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld is this would allow a fresh look at the policy. And I think Roger Cressy raised an interesting argument, was that I would be interested to hear from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Pete Pace, his reaction. I would be interested to hear what the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Richard Myers, has to say in the coming days. Because as the president is in the command of authority, that means that military men and women with the stars on their shoulders give advice to the defense secretary, and then the defense secretary presents it to the civilian commander-in-chief. Has there been a disconnect there? Will we learn more about that? Do the men and women feel that they've been getting that information to the president? And then, of course, it becomes incumbent on Gates in this administration, because of his confirmation hearings, to present some sort of new plan.
We're going to know a lot more in a moment, so let's take a hold right now. We're going to go see in a moment, meeting in the Oval Office, the President of the United States, the retiring Secretary of Defense and the new Secretary of Defense, something old, something new, and someone blue, all in the same room. It's going to be fascinating. The President's pick for Defense Chief, we'll see him with his boss as we return here. And by the way, we're coming up just after that. U.S. Congressman Jack Murtha in Pennsylvania, one of the top critics of the war in the U.S. Congress, who's running for Democratic Majority Leader in this new session. You're watching Hardball on MSNBC.
How can it be offensive if it's true?
Okay, first of all, I'm not 100% in love with your tone right now.
Tone aside, historically, you guys have struggled to adapt.
Yeah, right. Walking upright, discovering fire, inventing the wheel, laying the foundation for all mankind. You're right. Good point. Sorry we couldn't get that to you sooner.
Connie, your reaction?
Sounds like someone woke up on the wrong side of the rock.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
I love you. Thank you.
Bon voyage.
Happy anniversary.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
You're the best.
Congratulations.
I miss you.
Just a little something.
Happy birthday.
Surprise.
Thanks.
Have a good trip. Felicitaciones.
I'm going to miss you.
When you have something important to say it in black and white.
My name is Shadi Ramli, and this is my story. I work in a restaurant. When I have a cold, I dread the lunch hour. I have this pain all over here, and my nose is just clogged. That doesn't work in a restaurant. I went to the pharmacist. He reached around the counter and pulled out Aleve Colisynus. Bless that, man. That's a great feeling when you can start breathing again. I've tried all this stuff, and it just makes me drowsy. You need to know where your hands and your fingers are when you're slicing and dicing. In the back of a kitchen. Nobody wants to hear that. For my cold, I use Aleve Colisynus.
Gary. Can we take off our blindfolds yet?
What? Ruin the surprise?
Are some real estate websites taking you for a ride? Only showing you the homes they want you to see? Things are different at RE/MAX.com. RE/MAX.com shows you all the listings in thousands of cities and towns so you can find your perfect place.
Okay.
Hey!
See all the listings. Visit RE/MAX.com today.
If you purchased or refinanced your home a couple of years ago and you got one of those adjustable teaser rates to qualify, just call or log on to ditech.com and refinance to a low fixed rate. Log on or call 1-800-71-FIXED.
I'm not a big fan of homework, but every once in a while you do learn something. Like, did you know we've got more coal in America than the Middle East has oil? We've got like a 250-year supply. Now that's worth knowing. Here, I'll tell you more.
I really think we should pull over. They want us to pull over. Pulling over.
Are our SUVs as much fun as our bikes?
You left us at the diner. There's a new number in it. Let's go.
Introducing the all-new midsize Suzuki XL7. It's going to be a great ride.
Business-sized spending power. Spending power that can be increased on the spot. That's the Business Gold Rewards Card from American Express. Apply now and pay no fee for 1 year. Bonuses that help you build rewards points fast. Up to 100,000 points the first year. Call 800-NOW-OPEN to apply and get 5,000 bonus points to start. Open, how American Express serves small business.
Welcome back to Hardball. In just a few moments, we're looking now at the Oval Office. The president's expected to greet Donald Rumsfeld there to speak together. With also joining them will be the new Secretary of Defense designate, Robert Gates, who once worked for this president's father. It's such an interesting meeting, and I was kidding, something old, something new, someone blue. The president can't much enjoy this, except it's a new beginning forced upon him by the American public by what he calls the thumping his party took yesterday at the polls. But he's certainly taking, well, I have to say the strategic retreat is difficult, but he's managing it. He's doing something. The American people must feel good that their vote meant something, instead of playing Louis the 16th or somebody up there saying that we will continue the reign. You know, Howard?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that the president was actually working on this before the election, and he was working on it, I bet you, quite a bit before
to what
the
effect?
election.
Did he think this was coming?
Well, I think he thought in his mind that he didn't want to give the enemies the satisfaction of looking like he was yielding to politics. That as commander-in-chief, I think this is the way he thinks, as commander-in-chief, I'm not going to be weakened by politics.
One other reason, he's only got one bullet in his gun.
Right.
If he'd done that before, then taken a thumping, then he would have had to go.
Or Cheney.
I mean,
everybody keeps saying there's no way that Cheney goes unless Cheney chooses to go. Is there another route I didn't know about?
No, probably not.
I mean, I think Howard's got a great point there. I mean, I could imagine Bush seeing this as the insurgents, seeing this as victory, both the midterm and this firing. I mean, and that's, I'm sure, what concerned him.
You're right that's the
reason. It has that appearance.
I mean, Hitler heard that Roosevelt had died. He was thrilled. When we heard that Ho Chi Minh had died, we have a lot of people say, oh, well, maybe we can win this one now. Right. Any defeat or any death within the enemy camp is seen as a positive sign.
The big question here that's going to be hanging over this event we're going to see, and really all of politics for the next year, is if the situation in Iraq is as dire as Barry McCaffrey, who's an optimist by nature, was putting it, what ideas is anybody going to come up with? What ideas are there to actually make it work? If Bush says the goal is an Iraq that can be unified, that can sustain and protect itself and be free, how do we get from here to there? Who has the idea of how to do it? Or is it all just a smokescreen for covering our retreat in the end?
But this is also, I think, the international headlines are going to be significant. Already this morning, they are suggesting that this is a repudiation of the Bush foreign policy and the war in Iraq, some of the foreign papers. Now, with the firing of Secretary Rumsfeld, that will also be seen that way. In our domestic papers, one, it's the president fires the Secretary of Defense, signals change of course in Iraq with new defense secretary. And the second big storyline will be why has the son reached back into his father's administration to gain a new way forward? Bush fires defense chief. That translates into all the languages. I read the same papers you did earlier today that pointed out there's a member of the European Parliament that said the long nightmare is over.
That was the socialist leader of the parliament.
It's also a good way to stave off.
Do you think that the Gaullist would have been any more pleasant to us?
No, they'd probably be harsher. They'd probably be harsher, as a matter of fact.
This move also helped put off the. It's hard to call him a lame. I mean, a lame duck can still fire people. It's hard to call him a lame duck, and he's fired, particularly with this visual. I mean, talk about the optics. I mean, the Oval Office. The power.
Is that is this to show that Rumsfeld's a good sport and part of this transition already?
Maybe he'll get the Medal of Honor now, like George Tenet did.
Does it come with a gag?
But George Tenet, Mr. Slam Dunk, they gave his reward.
Does it come with a gag?
Was the Medal of Honor. Yes,
that's a big question. A lot
it.
of this sourcing with a lot of these books, these fabulous books that have come out, is really fed by people who've been fired or pushed out. Here they are, the gentleman, the President of the United States, the current Secretary of Defense, and the new designee.
Earlier today, I announced my intent to nominate Robert Gates to be the next Secretary of the Defense. And now I'm pleased to introduce him to the American people. I also am looking forward to paying tribute to the man he will succeed. America remains a nation at war. We face brutal enemies who despise our freedom and want to destroy our way of life. These enemies attacked our country on September the 11th, 2001. They fight us in Afghanistan and Iraq, and they remain determined to attack our country again. Against such enemies, there's only one way to protect the American people. We must stay on the offense and bring our enemies to justice before they hurt us again. In this time of war, the President relies on the Secretary of Defense to provide military advice and direct our nation's armed forces as they engage our enemies across the world. The Secretary of Defense must be a man of vision who can see threats still over the horizon and prepare our nation to meet them. Bob Gates is the right man to meet both of these critical challenges. Bob was one of our nation's most accomplished public servants. He joined the CIA in 1966 and has nearly 27 years of national security experience, serving 6 presidents of both political parties. He spent nearly 9 years serving on the National Security Council staff. And at the CIA, he rose from an entry-level employee to become the director of the Central Intelligence. And his experience has prepared him well for this new assignment. Bob understands the challenges we face in Afghanistan. As President Reagan's Deputy Director of Central Intelligence, he helped lead America's efforts to drive Soviet forces from Afghanistan. The success of these efforts weakened the Soviet regime and helped hasten freedom's victory in the Cold War. Bob understands the challenges facing our nation in Iraq. He served as Deputy National Security Advisor to the first President Bush during Operation Desert Storm, as American troops repelled Iraqi aggression and drove Saddam Hussein's forces from Kuwait. More recently, he served as a member of the Iraq Study Group, a distinguished independent panel of Republicans and Democrats, led by former Secretary of State Jim Baker and former Congressman Lee Hamilton. As part of this commission, he has traveled to Iraq and met with the country's leaders and our military commanders on the ground. He'll provide the department with a fresh perspective and new ideas on how America can achieve our goals in Iraq. Bob understands how to lead large, complex institutions and transform them to meet new challenges. As Director of Central Intelligence following the collapse of the Soviet Union, he was responsible for leading all the foreign intelligence agencies of the United States. And he's brought that same leadership and abilities as his work as president of our nation's 6th largest university, Texas A&M. When the A&M Board of Regents interviewed him for the job, he described himself as an agent of change. As president, he delivered on that promise, initiating wide-ranging reforms to almost every aspect of campus life. He'll bring that same transformational spirit to his work in the Department of Defense. Bob Gates is a patriot whose love for country was nurtured in the Kansas community where he was raised. He's worn our nation's uniform. He's a strategic thinker who was educated at 3 of America's finest universities, receiving his bachelor's degree from William and Mary, a master's degree in history from Indiana University, and a doctorate in Russian and Soviet history from Georgetown. He's a leader in the business community who served on the boards of several major corporations. He's a man of integrity, candor, and sound judgment. He knows that the challenge of protecting our country is larger than any political party, and he has a record of working with leaders on both sides of the aisle to strengthen our national security. He has my confidence and my trust, and he will be an outstanding Secretary of Defense. Bob follows in the footsteps of one of America's most skilled and capable national security leaders, Donald Rumsfeld. Don is the longest-serving member of my cabinet, and next month he will reach another milestone when he becomes the longest-serving Secretary of Defense in the history of our nation. I appreciate his willingness to continue serving until his successor is in place, because in a time of war, our nation cannot be without a strong and steady hand leading our Department of Defense. Don has served in times of great consequence for our nation. Few will forget the image of Don Rumsfeld as he helped rescue workers carry the victims from the rubble of the Pentagon on September the 11th, 2001. In the weeks that followed, he directed the effort to plan our nation's military response to an unprecedented attack on our soil. Under his leadership, U.S. and coalition forces launched one of the most innovative military campaigns in the history of modern warfare, driving the Taliban and its al-Qaeda allies from power in a matter of weeks. In 2003, on my orders, he led the planning and execution of another historic military campaign, Operation Iraqi Freedom, that drove Saddam Hussein from power and helped the Iraqi people establish a constitutional democracy in the heart of the Middle East. History will record that on Don Rumsfeld's watch, the men and women of our military overthrew 2 terrorist regimes, liberated some 50 million people, brought justice to the terrorist Zarqawi and scores of senior al-Qaeda operatives, and helped stop new terrorist attacks on our people. America is safer and the world is more secure because of the service and the leadership of Donald Rumsfeld. As he led the Pentagon in an unprecedented war, Don never took his eye off another vital responsibility, preparing America for the threats that await us as this new century unfolds. He developed a new defense strategy. He established a new Northern Command to protect the homeland, a new Joint Forces Command to focus on transformation, a new Strategic Command to defend against long-range attack, and transformed U.S. Special Operations Command for the war on terror. He led our efforts to create a new NATO response force that allows NATO to deploy rapidly anywhere in the world. He undertook the most sweeping transformation of America's global force posture since the end of World War II. He revitalized Americans' efforts to develop and deploy ballistic missile defenses and led a comprehensive review of America's nuclear forces that has allowed us to undertake dramatic reductions in offensive nuclear weapons. Don's work in these areas did not often make the headlines, but the reforms that he has set in motion are historic, and they will enhance the security of the American people for decades to come. Over the past 6 years, I've relied on Don Rumsfeld's advice and counsel. I've come to know his character and his integrity. As the Secretary of Defense, he has been dedicated to his mission, loyal to his president, and devoted to the courageous men and women of our armed forces. Don once famously said, "There are known knowns, there are known unknowns, and there are unknown unknowns." Well, Mr. Secretary, here is a known known. Your service has made America stronger and made America a safer nation. You will be missed, and I wish you and Joyce all the best in the years to come. Don Rumsfeld's a tough act to follow. That's why I picked a man of Bob Gates' caliber to succeed him. When confirmed by the Senate, Bob will bring talent, energy, and innovation to the Department of Defense. He'll work every day to keep the American people safe and to make our nation more secure. And he'll do a superb job as America's next Secretary of Defense. Bob, I appreciate you agreeing to serve our nation again, and congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. President, thank you for this high honor and for your confidence. And let me add my thanks to Secretary Rumsfeld for his service. I entered public service 40 years ago last August. President Bush will be the 7th president I have served. I had not anticipated returning to government service, and have never enjoyed any position more than being president of Texas A&M University. However, the United States is at war in Iraq and Afghanistan. We're fighting against terrorism worldwide, and we face other serious challenges to peace and our security. I believe the outcome of these conflicts will shape our world for decades to come. Because our long-term strategic interests and our national and homeland security are at risk, because so many of America's sons and daughters in our armed forces are in harm's way, I did not hesitate when the President asked me to return to duty. If confirmed by the Senate, I will serve with all my heart and with gratitude to the President for giving me the opportunity to do so.
Bob Gates, my congratulations to you on this nomination. My very best wishes. Look forward to working with you in the transition. Mr. President, thank you for your kind words and the wholly unexpected opportunity you provided me to serve in the Department of Defense again. These past years, 6 years, it's been quite a time. It recalls to mind the statement by Winston Churchill, something to the effect that I have benefited greatly from criticism, and at no time have I suffered a lack thereof. The great respect that I have for your leadership, Mr. President, in this little understood, unfamiliar war, the first war of the 21st century. It is not well known, it was not well understood, it is complex for people to comprehend, and I know with certainty that over time the contributions you've made will be recorded by history. I must say that it's been the highest honor of my life to serve with the talented men and women of the Department of Defense, the amazing men and women, young men and women in uniform. It's a privilege, and their patriotism, their professionalism, their dedication is truly an inspiration. They have my respect. They will remain in my prayers always. Thank you. Mr. Secretary.
That was a rather informal and certainly a brief program there. A great deal of information about the biography of Robert Gates, which could have been picked up in any newspaper or on any online service. Oddly, the President spent a lot of time extolling the background, the pedigree of the man he's just named, but he didn't need to call a press conference to do that or call this moment. I'm still a bit amazed by this. It may be the courtesy he wishes to extend to the outgoing Secretary of Defense and to give them that, what we call a photo op, a picture of he with the President.
Well, that was not a very pleasant photo op if that was what it was supposed to be.
You think it was abrupt?
I think it was very abrupt, and I think you had Donald Rumsfeld talking about a little understood, unfamiliar war that history would reward eventually these leaders who are now criticized so much. It had a melancholy air bordering on the defiant.
Yes.
Bordering on the defiant. But what President Bush is doing is trying to somehow relaunch his presidency in the last 2 years on the topic of Iraq. You've said it's like a war cabinet. I imagine that this was somehow in the middle of Korea or World War II or something like that. That's the analogy Bush wants. Bush wants the American people to be reminded of and to think that we are in wartime. And generals are changed in wartime, the way Truman did or Lincoln did or FDR did. And that's the frame he's trying to put around it to convince himself and the Republican base that the reason they lost the election was for noble reasons because they're fighting an unpopular war. That's what the talking points are. That's what's in Bush's head right now. I'm fighting an unpopular war. I'm suffering. Rumsfeld's got to suffer.
Is this the biggest decision he's ever made on his own without the partnership of Dick Cheney, Nora? I try to think they've been such a partnership. And to have the president have it word to get out that he had done this on his own over the objections of his vice president, to do this all by himself. He didn't do it apparently with his father's blessing or his father's pat on the back, like he just gave the pat on the back to Secretary Rumsfeld. All by himself, he's leading this country now, it looks.
I don't know if that he made it all by himself, because he may have also had the advice of his wife and his current new White House chief of staff and others, and perhaps Secretary of State Condoleezza
and
Rice.
His father.
If that,
we don't
yes,
know that.
We don't know that.
That's a jump.
But we do know that it is probably the biggest decision he's made without the consent of the Vice President Cheney, as far as we know.
Pretty dramatic stuff. Let's go to Jack Murray, the congressman from Pennsylvania, who was reelected again the other day from Johnstown, Pennsylvania. Mr. Murtha, thank you for joining us. What is your emotion now in regard to the president's decision?
Well, Chris, until I heard the rhetoric, I thought it was something needed to be done. You remember just a couple days ago, they said we're going to keep the secretary on, nothing's going to change. And of course, as I said over and over again, me speaking out's one thing, the public's way ahead of me, the Army Times speaking out's one thing. When the public speaks, when the citizen speaks in the polling place, it's going to change things. And it did change things. They saw something had to be done. But when I listen to the rhetoric, I see the same old rhetoric. And as I've said to the White House, folks, the policy doesn't work at the Defense Department. The policy's set in the White House. Unless we change the policy, nothing's going to happen. And I hear the rhetoric and the speeches are the same old speeches, the rosy scenario. And the other thing that I say, Chris, and this is the thing that worries me the most, they keep talking about victory, they keep talking about democracy, and those are goals. They are not strategies. The military deserves a strategy. Now, Bob Gates is a good friend of mine. I've served, I was chairman of the committee when he worked for Bush 1. We get along fine. But if the policy doesn't change, it's not going to make any difference at all. And we got all kinds of money problems in the military. So this is not a change that I see making any difference at this point.
Do you believe that the president intends to change policy or just change the man he seeks to carry it out?
I think this is a signal that he's going to try to change the direction of the country. He's going to try to do something in Iraq. I think what's going to happen is he needs a legacy. He's a failed president at this point. So he needs to leave a legacy. He's going to look to Baker and Hamilton Commission to make a recommendation. I think the Democrats operating from a power base can make some suggestions. We can work together. We may very well be able to start the redeployment of our troops. And that's what it's all about. The first step to stability is redeploying our troops.
Well, it looked to me like in his speech today, the president at the press conference was trying to segregate you and the people who really think this war is a bad idea and want to see some expeditious redeployment of the troops away from the pack. It's like he says, I want to try to get half or two-thirds of the Democratic caucus, the new, more powerful caucus, to join me in a bipartisan effort. But he said, I'm not going to bring in the people who want to leave now. Didn't you think that he was trying to push you out of the deal?
Well, I'm not sure of that. I think we just have to wait and see. You know, he talked bipartisan in one breath, but what worries me is the rhetoric of the new secretary designate. He's saying the war on terrorism in Iraq. There's not a war on terrorism in Iraq. It's a war in Iraq, but it's a civil war in Iraq. That's the thing that worries me. This whole thing has gone on over and over. A rosy scenario. It's going to get better. It doesn't get better. Attacks have doubled since I spoke out last year on a monthly basis. All the things that I measure haven't gotten better. Unemployment is 60% still, and so the policy has to change. The thing that worries the people in Iraq, and 61% of them want us out of there, is that they don't have the ability to take over. We don't give them the incentive. They're locked. Their government is locked in the green zone. We have to give them incentive to get out. Changing the Secretary of Defense is not going to make a difference in the policy, and the words I heard, unfortunately, aren't changing a thing.
Do you have a sense that Dick Cheney has been pushed out of the action here?
Well, I've felt for a long time that the vice president doesn't have the influence that he had before. I think that even Karl Rove and the vice president, their policy has not been listened to as carefully because, let me tell you, I think the problem with vice president, the war he served with as Secretary of Defense went so easily that he doesn't understand the limitation of power. The president himself doesn't understand the limitation of his power. There's only a perception of power with the president. And when the people speak, he's got to change direction, whether he likes it or not. And he's going to change direction if he wants to leave any kind of a legacy.
Do Do you think he was being patronizing to say, or the Secretary of Defense, who's outgoing, Rumsfeld, said today, just a minute ago, that this war is unfamiliar and people don't understand it? In other words, with a higher level of understanding, we, the American people, would support the war. Did you get that message? In other words, he's right, he's deep, you're lightweights, you don't get it, and the American people are lightweights, they don't get it, because deeper men like him get it, and it's our fault we don't get it. That was his message, I thought.
Yeah. Well, Chris,
doesn't that anger you that he's talking down to the Congress saying you don't get it?
Well, they have been arrogant and condescending with this Republican Congress. Now they're going to have to deal with a Democratic majority. So they're going to have to change their attitude or they're going to have no legacy at all. They've demonized anybody that came up with a policy that was different. We have to have a policy that's good for America. And the troops and their families deserve a strategy which is achievable. We do not have an achievable strategy. The reason the Army Times wrote the article, say, to get rid of Rumsfeld, because they're disenchanted with his leadership. The military's been disenchanted for over a year. They're unhappy about it. And so, but this doesn't satisfy the basic problem. The basic problem is the policy has to be changed. And I didn't think about it, but those are condescending words. Now, it may very well be that he'll take action which will be bipartisan if he starts talking to people that know something about this kind of a business, and he starts to think about the lives that have been lost and the hardship that these young troops are going through. They're going back 3 and 4 times. There's tremendous pressure on them. The families' divorce rates up, and they've had to reduce the standards of the military. So they got some real problems here we have to face, and we can do it in a bipartisan manner. If they talk condescendingly to us and they ignore our advice, it's not going to happen.
What's the difference between you and Steny Hoyer in terms of the way you would approach an approach from the administration on putting together a bipartisan position on Iraq?
Well, I think you have to know what you're talking about. I think you have to really understand defense. This is what I've talked about in the very start. There were 2 reasons I believe we should redeploy, and of course Steny Hoyer disagreed completely. He says the same thing the president said, and for a long time, for 6 or 7 months, he kept saying the same thing, and that's a big disagreement. His policy was basically the same as the president. Well, we'll just stay and let them educate the battalions, train the battalions, and so forth. Then we'll get out. That is long gone. That cannot be done any longer. We passed that over a year ago. So I'm convinced that this whole thing can only be done the way I've recommended it. And there's 2 policies. One is you agree with the president, and the other is you agree with redeployment. That's the first step towards stability. And I don't see him advocating that.
Thank you very much, Congressman John Murtha of Pennsylvania, candidate for Democratic Majority Leader in the new Congress. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Let's go right now to Senator Joe Biden, who may well be, in a matter of weeks, once again, chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator Biden, you're already talking like you got the chair. Are you confident you'll get it?
Oh, no. I was asked if I got the chair. No, I'm not confident. I'm optimistic that will probably happen. I had a long talk with Dick Lugar today. I don't think it's going to alter a great deal about how we're going to proceed, whether Dick is the chairman in a 50-50 Senate or I am chairman in a 51-49 Senate. We agree on an awful lot of things, and I think we ought to be able to set the example for a genuine bipartisan approach to American foreign policy that requires the president to make some real changes.
Did you hear the ice cracking today on administration foreign policy in Iraq? Did you hear the ice cracking, or was it all cosmetic? We're going to move the chairs around, get rid of Rumsfeld, bring in another hawk, no problem?
You know, honest to God, Chris, I don't know. You and I have been around Washington a long time.
I still want to know the answer. I don't know. Is it a cosmetic change? Is he scapegoating? I
don't know.
Let me get tougher here. Is he scapegoating? He scapegoated Karl Rove for losing all the seats in Congress. Then he went along and it seemed like he's scapegoating Rumsfeld. Rumsfeld told me he was never even asked whether he should go to Iraq tonight in this war. So Rumsfeld was an apparatchik. He carried out a policy. Do you believe this president is ever going to blame himself and say, I was wrong in going into Iraq, or is this all just distraction from that fundamental question?
I think it's a distraction from the fundamental question. But look, Chris, we have to move beyond here. The one thing I think the president, I've asserted on occasion, the president is tone deaf. I've been tone deaf in my career, but let me tell you, he'll be stone deaf if he doesn't understand what just happened.
Well, let me ask you about the people you talked to in the country. You've been moving around the country rather briskly. You've met an awful lot of people. You're running for president. Do you think the message from the people the other day was change secretaries of defense or change policy?
Change policy. But it is important that to demonstrate that he's willing to change policy, the Secretary of Defense has to get out of the way. So he's done one of the things that's a precondition for changing policy. It'd be impossible to change policy with Rumsfeld in place. It was just, he could never do it. But the second part is, because he's changed Rumsfeld, does that mean he's going to change policy? No. I think the way he'll change policy, I think he's going to have a rude awakening when he finds out that, at least speaking for the Senate, that an awful lot of Republicans are prepared to join an awful lot of Democrats in a call for a significant change in policy.
Let me ask you about the vice president's role. We're learning through NBC sources that the decision to remove or relieve Rumsfeld and to bring in Gates were both met with opposition by the vice president. He's very close to Rumsfeld. Rumsfeld is in many ways his instrument, I believe. And he didn't want to see his instrument removed. That's the job he used to have. You're laughing, but you know this is true. And then he brought in a guy who's not an ideologue, not a neoconservative so-called, just another guy who believes in realistic foreign policy, a closer advisor to the former President Bush than this one. Do you think that this president, can he put up with Cheney's pouting for more than a couple days? That's what I'm asking.
No.
Once he crosses Cheney, doesn't he have to come back to him in a couple of days and say, okay, Dick, I got a new Secretary of Defense. I think you guys can work together. We'll still stay hawkish. We won't leave. We're going to have permanent bases in Iraq. Can he let Cheney pout around the corner from his office for more than a couple days before he gives in again?
No, and by the way, one thing about this president, and in my meetings with he and Cheney, there's no question who the boss is. He, the president's the boss. He won't talk to Cheney that way. He'll just say, shut up, Dick, or something to that effect.
Can you give me some videotape of that to warm my heart?
I tell you, Chris, I believe that. Now, here's what he did. Here's what this president does. He delegates full authority and walks away. I think he just went out and got a new broker.
Whoa.
It's a little bit like someone managing his money. He decided that Cheney was the guy that was the smartest guy to do this. And now I think he's decided Cheney ain't working. And so what he's saying is, Dick, I'm changing. I'm the boss. Here's what we're doing.
What did you think of that whack? What did you think of that sort of that slap, I have to call it, at his campaign manager, Karl Rove? I'm thinking about scapegoating here because he took a whack and I'm like, I worked harder than he did. And then saying, basically, I'm going to solve the problem in Iraq by getting rid of Cheney, who is the problem. I mean, it seems like in so many ways, and he was going after the ethics of people in Capitol Hill. But he did, I suppose, take some of the responsibility for what happened because he did say he's head of the party.
Look, you're asking me to do something I'm not very good at. I have great difficulty understanding the president and his motivations. I don't think you'll ever hear the president say that, look, I made a mistake. I think we have to change policy. I went ahead and, I mean, I just think the only thing that works with the president is a heavy dose of reality repeatedly injected.
Okay, I think that's great. Let me ask you about, you grew up and watched Senator Fulbright hold hearings on Vietnam. You saw the power of a chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee at a time when war is being questioned, to bring the American people together to resolve and to unite behind a policy shift if necessary. What power do you have and what do you foresee using should you become chair in that regard?
Well, Chris, I would cite the brief time I was chairman. I think you would acknowledge that those serious hearings I held with Dick Lugar at the end of July, before he went to war, had a significant impact. There was universal at least recognition that they were open, fair, critical. We brought in all parties, and they got very wide circulation, and were greeted with as being credible. So I hope that I am up to that. I think I am. I think that's the fundamental purpose of the Foreign Relations Committee. The truth of the matter is, look, you know the Congress as well as anybody in the media. And you know full well the United States Senate cannot make foreign policy. The Foreign Relations Committee does not make foreign policy. It can only try to shape it by educating the American public on it. and thereby putting pressure or support behind the president's initiative.
Will you hold Fulbright-style hearings on the war in Iraq?
Yes. The absolute answer, I called Dick Lugar today, and I said, Dick, if it turns out I am the chairman, I would look forward to you and I holding, I would start off in January the week-long series of hearings, bringing in every responsible person, reflecting every point of view, and have very methodical hearings, but not starting off, as some in my party may want to do, and going back and going into the...
Or we'll vote. Oh, no. This is on the level, and it's completely real, as you well know. I mean, we're not imagining this. I'm not even criticizing it. I don't think it's bad that she runs for president. I don't think it's illegitimate that she raises a ton of money now. I think it's great, but it is real. I mean, don't tell us we're not watching what we're watching.
And she does now have to share the stage with another great lady in Nancy Pelosi. It'll be interesting to see how the party plays that out.
Great day for America. Thank you both. I appreciate it. And thank you for watching. We'll see you back here at 4 and 6 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. Our coverage continues now with Hardball with Chris Matthews. Here he is.
What a difference a day makes. On Monday, Bush had all the cards. Tonight, he's a president without a Congress. Let's play hardball.
The amazing thing about this election, and what surprised me somewhat, is that this economy is strong. A lot of times all fears are decided by the economy. And yet, obviously there was a different feel out there for the election. And the economy was overwhelmed by the toughness of this fight, the toughness of the war.
Good evening, I'm Chris Matthews, and welcome to Hardball. On Election Day, voters came out in full force and threw the ruling Republicans out of the House. Americans were clearly motivated by the war in Iraq. 2 out of 3 voters called the war very important to their vote. An unpopular war and an unpopular president handed this election to the Democrats. But the election was also about change, and change is exactly what the president delivered today when he announced the resignation of Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld.
Donald Rumsfeld is a patriot who served our country with honor and distinction. He is a trusted advisor and a friend, and I'm deeply grateful to his service to our country. I've asked Bob Gates to serve as the Secretary of Defense.
Let's bring in a couple of political experts to talk about all the big changes today. Mark McKinnon and Mike Feldman are co-founders of HotSoup.com. Well, let's start with Mark. Is Rumsfeld out a smart political move for the president?
I think it's a great political move, Chris. As the president said today, we got a thumping, and I feel a little bit like a homeowner after a hurricane checking for property, see if there's any property left, and saying, oh, great, the cat's still alive. But the reality is that the president in Texas, we saw him govern with a divided government and get a lot done. And I think with the announcement of Secretary Rumsfeld today, the president is saying very clearly, we're going to move ahead, we're going to make progress, we're going to work together. And I think we're going to see a lot of productive work here in the next couple of years.
Okay, Mike, what was the rush?
Well, look, I think he had no choice. The message, as you put in your setup piece, was loud, and I think the president had to come out today and say he heard it. Iraq, the president, and in some ways Secretary Rumsfeld were at the center of what became a nationalized election. So I think the president was smart to very quickly hit the ground running, making a major move. So I think this is necessary moving forward.
Chris, if I could I just want to say, the president said with a majority that he never wanted to play small ball. He wanted to get big things done. I think you're going to see the same thing with a minority, and I think that he's not content to just warm the seat and have gridlock the next couple of years. So I think he's going to surprise a lot of folks and get a lot done on immigration, energy, education. I think there's going to be a surprising amount of progress in the next couple of years.
Mike, did he rob the Democrats' thunder by moving so darn quick today? I mean, it seemed like there was everybody expected, a day or two the Democrats will wallow in their victory, do a number of victory laps. Now the president stole that time away from him. He said, you won, let's move.
Well, look, the president always has the ability to take center stage. He's got the bully pulpit. I think a lot of today was about ball control, but it really was also about sending the message to the American people that he heard them. I think he needed to do that. The question now is, was this, a part of a PR plan, or is the president going to come halfway? And frankly, are Democrats in Congress going to come halfway? And are we going to get something done in the next couple of years? Because they're valuable years. These are big issues.
Why should they go halfway? Why should Democrats, Mike, come halfway to help the president look better in his last 2 years?
Well, I don't think it's about making the president look better. I think the voters yesterday said we want to see progress on issues. I don't think they voted for Democrats in the House and what looks to be Democrats in the Senate so that there'd be gridlock for another 2 years. I think Democrats roll up their sleeves and work with the president. What I heard today from soon-to-be Speaker Pelosi, what I heard from other leading Democrats were they're going to get to work right away, and they hope that the president will engage with them.
Do you really think, Mark, that the Democratic Congress, it looks like maybe the whole Congress working with a Republican president who's so stubborn, fanatically famous for being stubborn, is going to work?
Well, I think the interesting thing about the constituency of the new Congress and the new Democrats that are coming to Congress is that they are a much different breed. They are, a lot of them, conservative and most of them pragmatic. And I think that they know that they're going to be in very marginal districts, and they want to go back in a couple of years, not as ideologues, but people who got something done. So I think there's going to be a lot of physics on both sides of the aisle to make some progress here.
What about the Democrats' clout? Do they have enough clout to move the president from where he is on Iraq? Mike?
Well, they're going to have chairmanships in the House, and it looks like they're going to have chairmanships in the Senate. They're certainly going to have a mandate to some extent. I mean, look, I understand that the margins are not going to be that big, but the country did send a message. So I think they're going to have that moral authority and that electoral authority behind them.
Can they tell the president, no money, no game? If you don't do what we want in terms of negotiated settlement over there or some kind of a compromise, we're going to cut up the money?
Are you talking about Iraq specifically? I doubt it. I think what I've heard today from the leadership is that they're going to allow the Baker-Hamilton Commission to unfold here. They're going to work with Republicans. Look, I know that Democrats are accused of not having a plan for Iraq, but the fact of the matter is Democrats and Republicans right now are struggling with this issue, and everybody's all over the map, and I think there does need to be some organizing force. The election last night may be part of it. I think Baker-Hamilton may be part of it. But I think everybody realizes these are difficult problems, and they're going to have to work together to get something done moving forward.
Why have the Democrats embraced Baker-Hamilton before there even is a plan?
Why have Democrats embraced?
Yeah, the commission hasn't issued anything. Why are the Democrats saying they support it?
I think for the same reason that the president pointed today and said that he's hopeful that that will serve as a useful recommendation, because I think both parties are looking for some third party to come in and help broker something moving forward. I think that's true of the president, too.
Mark, is this like the Social Security deal where neither party can do it on its own because it requires some pain with the voters? Maybe national humiliation is part of the deal here. Something that isn't easy, because if it was a question of somebody getting credit for it, they'd be competing to get credit, not throwing themselves into this clinch with this commission.
Well, that's right, and that's what the president said in 2000. We had an ad. He said, why don't the hard things get done? Because they're hard. And so that's why I think actually there's some catalysts here. A new Secretary of Defense, the new commission report, a new majority in the Congress and the Senate with Democrats. So there's a lot of catalyzing factors for progress, and I think everybody wants progress.
Are people on the web right now that do hot soup? Tell me about how it's going, Mike, in your conversations that you got. Give me a summary of what people are saying about the Democrats and the Republicans getting it together. Are they saying the Democrats should indict, impeach, subpoena, that sort of thing, or are they saying they should cut deals? Which is it?
For the most part, I think people are saying they want progress on these issues. A lot of them are glad that the president heard the message for change, but they want to know what's next. Is the president going to come to the table? Are members of Congress who they just elected going to come to the table, and are we going to get something done on issues that they care about? All of these issues for the last several weeks we've been talking about through the prism of the election. And that's fine. It serves a purpose. And I think to a large extent that purpose was evident when people came out in droves to vote yesterday. But now people want to know what's next. They don't want to automatically devolve into the next political cycle. At least that's what I'm hearing from people in Hot Soup. They want to know, is Congress going to get something done? Is the president going to help them do it? And are we going to move forward to solve some of these tough problems?
So productivity is important on Capitol Hill. It can't just be an argument, an ongoing argument.
I think both sides will pay a price if we descend immediately into gridlock and more, frankly, just more political rhetoric.
But, you know, that's such a departure. It's hard for me to believe, Mark, that an election can change. I mean, we've had really no progress on Capitol Hill since the initial Bush year when they cut taxes. And basically, it's been 4 or 5 years of a war, and that's about it. What makes you think that they really do think that they can put it together, and both parties will say it's better for both of us to have a bill here and there, something done on minimum wage, something done on perfecting prescription drugs, something on tax deductions for college tuition, those kinds of things?
Well, it's going to be up to the leadership, and I think that the president is a realist and he's pragmatic. And I think, as I said before, he wants to get big things done. He doesn't want to warm the chair. And I think we're seeing great signs and great signals from Speaker Pelosi that she is of a similar mindset. And listen, there is just an enormous appetite. We hear from the hot soup community. They want accountability and they want progress. And I think, that's what elections are about. And I think Washington heard it this time.
Okay, I think so too. Thank you very much, Mark Midhin and Mike Feldman of Hot Soup. Coming up, Brian Williams' interview with Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi, the new Speaker of the House. She will be the first one ever in the history of our country to sit in that chair behind the president when he gives his State of the Union. That'll be a portrait. You're watching Hardball on MSNBC.
MSNBC's coverage of Decision 2006 is brought to you by Norfolk Southern.
Last year, Norfolk Southern and its shipping partners took hundreds of thousands of freight loads off the highway. In fact, they've invested millions to convert even more traffic in the coming years. So it's easy to see how the economy won't be the only thing that benefits. Norfolk Southern, the future of transportation.
The Philips HD Flat TV with Ambilight is the only flat TV with the power to transform a mood at the touch of a button. Simplicity is a button that transforms television.
Coming up, President Bush joked before the election that Nancy Pelosi was measuring for drapes. Who's hanging the crepe now when Hardball returns?
Are your fees out of whack with the investment service you're getting? Get them back in balance. At E-Trade, $50,000 or more gets you premium investment advice and service with access to free independent research. Be well balanced. Click, call, or visit today.
Stop aging, stop dying. That's our goal.
The Fountain is an epic mind-blower. 4 stars as premier magazine. It's daring and moving. A must-see.
Together we will live forever.
The Fountain. Rated PG-13. Starts Wednesday, November 22nd.
With fewer emissions than any engine of its kind, the GE NX jet engine is powering a fresh new way of looking at technology that even nature could approve of. Another product of pure eco-imagination from GE Aviation. GE, imagination at work.
Word around the watering holes that Wheels hitching on down to the Big D. And they done brung the whole kit and caboodle.
We're just bouncing like jackrabbits on an El Paso parking lot.
It's big fun in the Big D all week on Wheels. Tonight at 7:30 on K2, the Spirit of the Northwest.
What good are you as a police officer if you can't write tickets?
We investigate police officers who carry a badge and a gun and a paycheck but do very little police work. Why are these cops still on the job? Thursday night at 6:30 only on K2 News.
The Beavers take on UCLA live Saturday the 11th at 3:15 on CNW 14.
Welcome back to Hardball. After the House Democrats made big gains last night, NBC News nightly news anchor Brian Williams talked today with Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi of California. Let's watch.
I didn't have much sleep, but I didn't need much. I was very exhilarated by the outcome of the election.
Would you concur with the president that the call was cordial?
Oh, yes, the call was very friendly. He extended a hand of friendship, which I reciprocated and told him what I had said earlier in the evening, that I look forward to working with him in partnership, not in partisanship.
Leader, what does drain the swamp mean?
Drain the swamp means to turn this Congress into the most honest and open Congress in history. That is my pledge. That is what I intend to do.
She is about to become a grandmother of 6. In fact, any moment now.
There we go. We had a lot of pressure.
and the woman in line to become the next Speaker of the House says she is most excited to change this picture, to put a female face in this frame of 3 male faces for the very first time.
Let's talk about history, because I know history was riding along with you as you watched the results last night. I know you have thought today about your mother. I know you have thought today about your father, your own children and grandchildren.
Well, as you may know, I was raised in an Italian Catholic family in Baltimore, Maryland. Our faith is very important to us. Our patriotism, we love of faith, love of family, love of country. We took pride in our Italian-American heritage, and to be the first woman Speaker of the House and the first Italian-American Speaker of the House, it's quite thrilling for me.
Congresswoman Pelosi grew up around politics. Her father was the mayor of Baltimore and a member of Congress himself. She says she's ready to watch over her party and preside over what she calls great change.
You've said some rough things about the president. You have indicated he's a dangerous man. You have intimated he can't be trusted. How do you then sit down with this man and reason with him and bargain with him, beginning in the Oval Office this week?
Well, when I go into that office, I will bring with me the wishes of the American people. They want a new direction in Iraq. They want a new direction in our economy where many more people participate in the prosperity of our country. They want the American dream to be fulfilled by having more affordable education, better access to health care. They want energy independence and all that that means for our country. They want a dignified retirement.
You think they said all of those things with their votes last night?
I think they said a lot about wanting honesty and civility in government, and I think that they rejected not only the policy in Iraq, but the incompetence that has gone with it.
Up next, we're going to have the latest from Virginia with Hardball's David Schuster. You're watching Hardball on MSNBC.
Some stores start with a higher regular price, then mark it down and say it's 40% off. At Men's Warehouse, we like to keep our prices low every day. Customers seem to like it too. You're gonna like the way you look, I guarantee it.
Here's how it works. Get the nation's slimmest smartphone at a very slim price. The Q. With easy access to email and Windows Mobile. It's the stylish way to work. Exclusively from Verizon Wireless, America's most reliable wireless broadband network. Verizon Wireless, it's the network.
The moment may be right for you, but your sleeping beauty may want to wait till tomorrow. That's okay. You have up to 36 hours with Cialis. Cialis is the only erectile dysfunction tablet clinically proven to work up to 36 hours. 36 hours means you can be flexible and choose for yourselves when the moment is right. Tell your doctor about your medical conditions and all medications, and ask if you're healthy enough for sexual activity. Don't take Cialis if you take nitrates for chest pain, as this may cause an unsafe drop in blood pressure. Don't drink alcohol in excess with Cialis. Side effects may include headache, upset stomach, delayed backache, or muscle ache. To avoid long-term injury, seek immediate medical help if you experience priapism, an erection lasting more than 4 hours. If you have any sudden decrease in vision, stop taking Cialis and call your doctor right away. Some things take time. You can have it. 36-hour Cialis. When the moment is right. Will you be ready?
Have 50,000 going once, twice. Sold to the gentleman in the center.
I want to go ahead and sell it now.
Constantly buying and selling stocks doesn't make much sense either. That's why Edward Jones advises clients to buy long-term investments.
I'm Montel Williams. The Partnership for Prescription Assistance is traveling to all 50 states, making stops to help people pay for their medicine.
I was in a lot of pain. I wasn't able to afford my medications, and PPA gave me back my life.
This past year, America's pharmaceutical companies gave away more than $5 billion worth of medicines to people in need.
It has been a lifesaver for me in more ways than one.
If you need help, just call 1-888-4PPA now. The Partnership for Prescription Assistance, on the road to helping you.
Tonight, they said if you want change, vote for us. Now what? Keith shows you what the Democrats must do to make good on their deal with America. Countdown, MSNBC tonight at 8. So, where does Joe Scarborough fight for the average Joe? Scarborough Country, tonight at 9, only on MSNBC.
Welcome back to Hardball. One state left without the final tally. Virginia, the Senate race there between Senator George Allen and Jim Webb has yet to be nailed down. Hardball correspondent David Schuster is standing by in Richmond. David.
Well, Chris, the latest is that the official state tally, it's actually an unofficial state tally because it hasn't been certified yet, but it shows that Jim Webb is ahead of George Allen by about 7,000 votes. There's been a lot of talk about what could trigger a recount, but the important thing to remember right now is that the state law, the election laws, actually give George Allen some time where he really doesn't have to make much of a decision. Because right now there are canvassing teams, as required by law, who are essentially going back to every precinct and trying to make sure that the numbers that were reported last night were accurate. Were there any computer glitches? Were there any numbers that didn't match the number of voters? Were the numbers given to Webb that should have been given to Allen? And were these numbers transmitted correctly to the Secretary of the State for the Board of Elections? Already, one canvassing team has found that in one heavily Republican precinct, 1,900 votes that went to Jim Webb should have gone to George Allen, and it should have been 400 for Webb, not 400 for Allen. So when you take that precinct by itself, you start to lower the margin of difference from 7,000 down to 4,000. The question is going to be, will Jim Webb also pick up some votes because of mistakes, and what will the campaigns discover over the next 2 or 3 days? By all accounts, even the Allen campaign expects that they will know within the next 2 or 3 days what the canvassing teams have found. By next Tuesday, Chris, that's when the counties have to make their official notification to the state. The numbers will then essentially be clear to everybody, and then it's a question of, once the election results are certified, if it's close, then George Allen has the option at that point to ask a formal recount. Chris?
Well, give me the human considerations here and the political considerations and whether the Senator Allen keeps fighting this.
Well, I think the human considerations is one that you've mentioned before, and that is, Senator Allen, he has been serving the state of Virginia for a long time, both as governor and also now one term as senator, and obviously it's very difficult in a very tight election with 2.2 million votes cast is just sort of give up, especially when you're only talking about a margin right now of 4,000 or 5,000 votes. The political considerations, though, Chris, will start to build on George Allen perhaps next week. You already have the Democrats claiming victory. You already have Jim Webb saying the votes have been counted and I've won. The pressure really ratchets up once these counties next week come back to the Secretary of the State and say, look, here are our final numbers. And at that point, if George Allen is still thousands and thousands of votes behind, the pressure really ratchets up. And the other thing to keep in mind, Chris, this is not a state that's got chads or punch card ballots. It's all electronic machinery. So the final results that they should have next Tuesday, in all likelihood, those are going to hold pretty much to those numbers, even if there were to be a recount.
Explain to me why you're hearing, or we're hearing here at Hardball, that some Republican leaders are pushing for George Allen to throw in the towel.
I think there's a sense, Chris, that it better to just sort of, if George Allen is going to lose this thing, and a lot of Republicans looking at Virginia who are quite familiar with the Virginia, obviously because of its proximity to D.C., they also see a state where it's electronic balloting, computer machines. At a certain point in the next couple of days, it's going to be clear what the numbers were, and a number of Republicans suggest that 5,000 to 6,000 votes is difficult to make up in a recount. I think that's the first thing. I think the second one is right now, Chris, at least from what I'm hearing in Virginia, a number of Republicans would rather get this over with sooner so that you can get all the bad news out from last night essentially out there and then try to build from it. But you also hear some, Chris, some Republicans, including those who are very strong supporters of George Allen, who say, wait a second, if he's that close and you've got 2.2 million votes cast and the law allows him to make sure that every vote in Virginia is accurate, why not give him a couple more days to wait and see what happens?
Seems reasonable to me. Thank you very much, David Schuster, down in Richmond. NBC News congressional producer Mike Vaccaro watched the election results come in last night from the Democratic Party's election headquarters. Mike, was it you that was controlling the TV last night? Because I thought it was so great. And I talked to a friend of mine, Smith Bagley, today. He said he was over there, and Elizabeth Bagley, his wife, they're contributors and supporters of the Democratic Party. They told me that we were on all night there. That is great news in terms of us reaching the important demographics, of course.
You know, I'm compelled to tell you the God's honest truth, Chris. There was another cable network that will go unnamed that was on for a while, and I called over one of the aides who was working, had been sort of dragooned from Capitol Hill to come over and assist with this party. I said, could you at least put one of the televisions on MSNBC? And they came back and said that, well, they were going to rotate between 2 of the 3 cable networks, and I'm not going to tell you which of the third networks that they didn't rotate to. But that was the story, and that's how that turned out.
I think we're probably the one in the middle. But let me ask you politically, but let me ask you about the reaction of the people in Capitol Hill. So many jobs. I mean, I worked up there for years. So many jobs are going to disappear. In this case, Republican staff jobs all the way up to the big paying jobs all the way down to the bottom. And all kinds of new jobs being created on the Democrat side.
That's right. And, you know, remember in 1994, Democrats were wiped out of the House, wiped out of the Senate. Democratic lobbyists had a hard time making a living for the last 12 years. They're certainly going to be enjoying a renaissance as well. And now Republicans, remember, when you're talking about controlling the majority, especially in the House, you've got all the committee staff. You've got all the committee money. You've got more leadership staff and leadership money. Republicans, yeah, they're going to have to be laying people off. These people are going to be looking for jobs in associations, then on K Street, maybe going back to wherever they came, their hometowns, and looking for jobs. And if the Senate goes as well, it's going to be a similar situation. So the job market's certainly going to be in flux here in official Washington, D.C.
What do you see as the big battle? The battle between Murtha and Steny Hoyer for majority leader? Is that a hot one or not?
Well, you know, a lot of insiders are saying Hoyer's got that thing locked up, that they don't like the way this has gone down, even though Murtha is seen as an ally of Nancy Pelosi, and that many of these same people back Nancy Pelosi. But I'm told you should not discount Murtha. Murtha is a behind-the-scenes operator. He ran Nancy Pelosi's campaign. He ran the campaign, the leadership campaign, I'm talking about for Nancy Pelosi, and a man named John Larson, who won a down-ballot ticket, a total surprise, earlier in the year. So while a lot of people think that Hoyer, who represents the moderate wing of the faction, is going to beat back this challenge, Murtha is not being counted out, Chris.
I know Murtha quite well. I like him a lot, and I think he does work in the bat rooms. It's only recently he's done things like appear in Q&As and Vanity Fair and stuff like that. I was shocked.
It's very un-Murtha-like, isn't it? You know, there's one other race, Chris, and that's Rahm Emanuel. He said, give me 24 hours. He's thinking about jumping in the race to become the number 3 Democrat in the House. He'd run against a former chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus, who's the current number 3. His name is Jim Clyburn. That might create a headache for Nancy Pelosi. She's got some fences to mend with the Black Caucus over the Bill Jefferson affair.
That's not a smart move for him.
Well,
I don't think so. He doesn't want to get the Black Caucus, as they call it, the caucus on the Hill, mad at you, because that solidarity of that organization is very important to each of its members, and they don't like being beaten.
Rahm Emanuel, we know he's very forthright in his manner, and he broke a lot of china on the way to this huge victory last night that he, in large part, engineered. And it's not clear at all whether he would have the votes to defeat Mr. Clyburn, Chris.
I wonder, too. I think he may have other ambitions, perhaps even grander than we speak. Anyway, thank you, Mike Vaquera. Up next, we'll bring in our panel to talk about the new Democratic majority on Capitol Hill, Rumsfeld, and what it all means. What a two-day hit. This has been a 1-2 punch of news. You're watching Hardball on MSNBC.
Hardball is brought to you by CDW.
When you need the freedom of wireless computing, CDW responds with great technology like the HP Compact Business Notebook NC6320, featuring Intel Centrino Duo mobile technology. This lightweight notebook with Intel Core 2 Duo offers an ideal balance of connectivity, features, and security. So when you want to work on the go, we have the notebook for you. CDW, the right technology, right away.
Introducing the all-new Mitsubishi Outlander. Out everything. Everything.
I was walking down the street. I saw a poster.
Smart Balance Buttery Spread cooks like butter, spreads like butter, and tastes like butter without the cholesterol and high saturated fat, with no hydrogenated oil and no trans fat naturally, not artificially as some spreads. Smart Balance has the right balance of fats to help improve cholesterol as part of the Smart Balance food plan, with award-winning taste endorsed by professional chefs. Smart Balance. You're going to love that buttery taste.
I love you.
Thank you.
Bon voyage.
Happy anniversary.
Happy birthday.
You're the best.
Congratulations.
I miss you.
Just a little something.
Happy birthday. Thanks. Have a good trip.
Felicitaciones.
I'm gonna miss you.
When you have something important to say it in black and white.
Nice move.
Speaking of moves, where are you putting your money these days?
I'm in CGM Realty Fund.
A real estate fund. You?
You get the potential long-term capital appreciation of real estate, the convenience of a mutual fund, and it's managed by Ken Hebner.
Good point. Maybe the last one you'll score on me.
Touche.
Call 1-800-CGM-INFO for current performance information and a prospectus. Read the prospectus carefully.
You are sharp today.
If you're tired of paying for high-priced, old-fashioned help wanted ads in the newspaper, then do what over 1,000 other business owners have done. Make the switch to PortlandJobFinder.com, brought to you in partnership with Comcast Spotlight.
With the very intuitive and easy-to-use website and their excellent customer service support, I would highly recommend Portland Job Finder for all of your job posting needs.
PortlandJobFinder.com. We're the faster, more effective way to find and hire the local employees that you need now.
MSNBC.com, winner of 2 Online News Association awards, including Best News Website, your online home for NBC News, MSNBC.com.
I'm Melissa Rayberger. Here's what's happening. In a surprise move, Donald Rumsfeld is out as defense secretary, resigning after 6 years on the job. President Bush says he'll nominate former CIA Director Robert Gates to replace him. Gates was CIA Director under President Bush's father and is currently the president of Texas A&M University. Democrats are hoping Jim Webb holds on to his slim lead over incumbent Republican George Allen in Virginia. If he does, Democrats will win control of the Senate. They've already won control of the House. The U.S. military announced a soldier and a Marine were killed in Iraq. That raises the number of American troops killed there this month to 21. Last month, 105 U.S. troops were killed. And the Supreme Court heard arguments in one of the most important abortion cases since Roe v. Wade. At issue is Congress's ban on late-term abortions under the so-called Partial Birth Abortion Ban Act. Congress passed the measure and the president signed it into law in 2003. Now back to Hardball.
Return to Washington next week. I do so knowing that we have made a statement here tonight.
And as all the political pundits, maybe correctly now, were saying, why did you go out and talk about those unpopular things like the war? And I did, and I'm very proud. I do not rescind a word.
Well, welcome back to Hardball. The bombshell from Washington today. Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld is out. It may have diffused the Democrats' victory lap, but more bad news could be on the horizon for the Republicans today. Senator Joe Biden said he's going to call for hearings on the Bush administration's Iraq policy if he becomes chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. We're here with the panel. NBC's Andrea Mitchell, Pat Buchanan is MSNBC political analyst, Mike Allen is from the Time magazine, and radio talk show host and author of the book Muzzled, Michael Smerconius. Let's take a listen right now to what Joe Biden said this afternoon about what's coming. Will you hold Fulbright-style hearings on the war in Iraq?
Yes. The
news.
Absolute answer. I called Dick Lugar today, and I said, Dick, if it turns out I am the chairman, I would look forward to you and I holding, I would start off in January the week-long series of hearings, bringing in every responsible person, reflecting every point of view, and have very methodical hearings.
Let me ask you, Andrea, we all grew up with those hearings, the Fulbright hearings on Vietnam, and they did have an impact because they educated the country. They may have stirred up some opposition. They didn't change the policy necessarily. Are we beyond that in America, that hearings just don't carry the clout that they did in the old days?
Well, it depends. You know, there were hearings by Lugar and Biden, Lugar chairing, in September of 2002 on what the implications would be if we went into Iraq. And I was there every day, but I've got to tell you, people didn't pay as much attention as they probably should have. They laid it all out. Now, with the focus of attention and after all of the deaths and the wreckage that we have seen, I think people will pay attention.
Do you think, Pat, if we had had a full airing on the war in Iraq, we would have gone?
No, I don't think so. I mean, if it had, I think the decision,
a real national debate.
The decision to go to war was, the blank check was given to the president in October 2002 by the United States Senate, led by Democrats who wanted to get the issue out of the way for the election, which makes Joe Biden's investigation, he's going to investigate himself, why he didn't do due diligence and the rest of them, really before we went to war.
He tried, and his colleagues went against him.
So you think it would look like the Pentagon Papers again, how we get into this hole?
Well, yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I would like to know why they didn't do the job, but they're going to have to investigate themselves, too. Why they made the decision they did based on the evidence they got. Why didn't they get more evidence?
Let me just tell you what Biden wants to do, because I heard a longer piece of this as I interviewed him and trying to get this out of him. He wants to have hearings on the future, not about the past. He doesn't think we should go back and try to figure out how both parties got into this mess.
That's understandable.
Well, it's understandable. I would like to have the other hearings, complete with waterboarding, to try to find out what really happened, because I have not heard yet who told the president, good idea, go to Iraq. Right. Who made that little whisper to him? Right. We still don't know. Michael Smerconish, you listen to people all day. You stir them up out there. You're a tumbler, right? You excite them out there when you talk to people on the radio.
Didn't bring my dictionary.
Tumbler is Yiddishism. It means you know how to stir people. It's like the guys up in the mountain when it's raining and the old ladies are bored. You have to stir them up. Yeah. Jan Murray. Think Jan Murray.
You know, Chris,
let me ask you. I want to get this. I know, but I know all this. Let me ask you this. Do you think the public is ready for a national debate on the future in Iraq?
Gosh, I sure hope so. I'm not certain that Joe Biden is the one who ought to lead that conversation.
Because he's like me?
Because he's like you, and nobody will get a word in edgewise. But I, for one, am sick and tired of the soundbite mentality of you're either for cutting and running or you want to stay the course. I'm all for having an intellectual conversation about how the hell we get out of there. I've wanted to have that conversation for a long, long time. But if you can't express yourself in 8 seconds or less, folks don't want to hear you these days.
The Senate has, Mike Allen, would a set of hearings right after the holidays help build support for a alternative policy a la James A. Baker and Lee Hamilton?
Well, Chris, I don't think you're going to have a lot of trouble building support for an alternative policy. I think that's one thing.
How about one we can understand?
Well, there's
the president said today, he admitted it, damn it, he came out and said, this war is too complicated for you people, it's too unfamiliar for you. Well, whose fault is that? I'm sorry, it was Rumsfeld who said that. Excuse me. Did you explain to the soldiers why they were fighting? Did you explain to the American people? You have had the bully pulpit.
I think this is all about an exit strategy.
Right.
All sides are looking to Jim Baker, and this is not what Jim Baker was really designed to do, but it's so remarkable to see that the man spurned really by Bush the younger, because he was so close and so highly identified with Bush the father, and because this President Bush blamed Jim Baker for contributing to the loss of the election in '92. For not getting in, not leaving the State Department and becoming campaign
manager. Also for turning
Syria.
down the money for Israel, a $10 billion loan guarantee, because it was money across the green line. He's such a hard-nosed guy about Middle East policy that a lot of people who care about Israel said, hey, this guy ain't on our side. In fact, we think he's on the other side.
Jim Baker is now the answer that both sides, because nobody can come up with an exit
strategy. I was shocked,
strategy.
Andrew, when they brought him into Florida. I go, of all the places, bring him into southern Florida and solve it, and yet he did solve it. He got that court decision by the Supreme Court, and to this day, we don't know how they got to the Supreme Court. Jim Baker won't tell you.
Jim Baker was not elected to run the foreign policy of the United States. He was not elected to decide war policy. He's got a right to give advice, but the President of the United States is elected to run it, and we got a new Congress which has been told, we want your input on foreign policy. Nobody can hide behind Jim Baker and his report.
Well, why are the Democrats trying to do that?
Because they do not want responsibility. It's quite obvious. The new Congress wants no responsibility for this war because they think it's going to be a disaster.
Yeah, Chris, I think...
Let me go, Mike, because I think, is this true that both sides, maybe even the president, are like infantrymen out there, and they know they can get shot easily, so they're all trying to get behind a big tank, and that big tank's name is Baker Hamilton. If they can run behind that tank, then the tank will take the fire and protect them. Is that what's going on here? No matter what's in that tank, no matter what it stands for.
Well, very vividly put. And yes, the White House is eager to embrace what they say, almost no matter what it is. And they got a little worried when they heard the people on the Baker Commission were calling around to think tanks to get ideas. Because they're like, you're the daddy.
They're trying to rent some ideas, too.
You know who's on the Baker-Hamilton Commission is Bob Gates. Bob Gates, who has, in front of the Council on Foreign Relations with Brzezinski from the Carter White House, recommended talking to Iran. This is the non-Rumsfeld Defense Department, if he gets confirmed, which we think is likely.
Okay.
And this is a big victory for Condoleezza Rice.
When Don Rumsfeld, who was such a man today, he took it. He just took what he had to do today for the team. He walked out there, he was almost like hunched over a bit like Anthony Hopkins, the actor, that hunched in, together. I got to get through this. I'm not going to cry. I'm going to take it from this guy because I've now proved unuseful anymore. When he said, Rumsfeld, this is too unfamiliar a war, too tricky a war, too uncommon, what did he mean, Angie? Because you understand all this. What is he trying to say?
What they mean is that this is not state-sponsored terrorism. This war on terror are non-state actors. This is the aftermath of 9/11. That is their explanation
for Iraq.
For why things are so difficult. It's the Iran, the Syria, the Al-Qaeda influence. That it is not the Cold War, the familiarity of the Cold War. It's not the enemies that you know you can't identify them. That is the Rumsfeld mantra.
You know, Bush was, Asquith said that a prime minister has to be a good butcher. George Bush was a good butcher today. That was a brilliant preemptive strike. It was brutal. He cut this man loose who had been loyal to him for 6 years, who's taken the hit. He's put Rumsfeld in the history books in a bad light as the architect of a policy that did not work. And I tell you, I admire the president for what he did today. He preempted the Democrats instead of having them squabbling all week long, get rid of Rumsfeld.
Did he free himself from Cheney? Did he free himself with Cheney? Because Cheney did not support this.
I think he moved athwart Cheney and moved with the new team, and Cheney belongs to the old team, the dissenters now.
The class act that Don Rumsfeld was today. Think about Don Regan. I mean, you were there when he was kicked in the head by then Vice President Bush, Bush 41, and fired. And he did it with a blast, a memoir, screaming all the way, shut the door, slammed the phone on the first lady.
And it was the same deal. It got leaked. Same day, same way.
And this was such a class act. Don Rumsfeld, who has really done a lot of painful things, and he was following the president's orders, and he took it.
He took the ball.
But it didn't have to end this way. I mean, one wonders why it didn't happen months ago.
Well, this president likes to be seen as the executioner. Look at Paul O'Neill. For some reason, this president wants to look like the guy who's pulling the switch on these people.
Didn't he do it to Sununu? Didn't he drop the hammer on Sununu?
In the old days.
Did.
Yes, for the old man.
Yeah, he might enjoy it.
I mean, Chris.
Whoa, Pat, we're going to stop on that and save that tape. He might enjoy inflicting pain. That means he's a sadist, named after the Marquis de Sade. Pat Buchanan has just accused the president of a malady worse than Mark Foley's. Our panel staying with us. This is Hardball, only on MSNBC.
Hey, Chuck.
I need access to data.
Okay.
It's in Germany.
Okay.
Oh, Bill, do I need to worry about hackers?
Bill?
Click on that app.
Built it last week.
Please leave a message for
Bill!
I wish I had
A program or
Some kind of software.
You know?
I know.
Bill, I think I just killed the printer.
When your infrastructure is ready for anything, your people are ready for anything.
It's half off at Joseph A. Bank. Hundreds of finely tailored suits, suit separates, and luxurious tuxedos half off. Handcrafted sport coats and dress pants half off. Plus, all Traveler dress shirts and sport shirts are on sale, with Traveler knit shirts half off. How about a huge selection of top coats and leather jackets? You guessed it, half off. Only at Joseph A. Bank.
Coming up, President Bush tips his hat to the Democrats. Will they change the course in Iraq? More with our panel when we come back with more Hardball.
I'm Montel Williams. The Partnership for Prescription Assistance is traveling to all 50 states, making stops to help people pay for their medicine.
I was in a lot of pain. I wasn't able to afford my medications, and PPA gave me back my life.
This past year, America's pharmaceutical companies gave away more than $5 billion worth of medicines to people in need.
It has been a lifesaver for me in more ways than one.
If you need help, just call 1-888-4PPA now. The Partnership for Prescription Assistance, on the road to helping you.
Hey, it's Sleeping Beauty.
Didn't sleep a wink.
I know, we've been waiting for you. Have the chess set already?
He cheats.
Hello, Honest Abe.
Whatever.
We just haven't played for so long.
I know, I just got all this stress at work.
It's cool, it happens to a lot of people.
Really?
Absolutely. More than half of adults report experiencing some kind of insomnia at least a few nights a week.
We just want you back.
Thanks, guys.
When you can't sleep, you can't dream. That's why there's Roserum, the first and only prescription sleep aid that in clinical studies shows no potential for abuse or dependence. Take it when you need it, stop when you don't. Your doctor can explain why Roserum is so different. Don't take Roserum if you're taking Luvox, fluvoxamine, or have severe liver problems. Avoid taking it with alcohol. Don't drive or operate machinery until you know how you'll react to Roserum. Roserum may affect some hormones. Consult your doctor about how this may affect you, or if your insomnia doesn't improve. Take Roserum right before bed. Side effects may include drowsiness, fatigue, and dizziness.
Just talk to your doctor.
Today,
the medicines, the plastics, the materials, things that make modern life modern come from one place, chemistry. Learn more at AmericanChemistry.com.
Next, they said if you want change, vote for us. Now what? Keith shows you what the Democrats must do to make good on their deal with America. Countdown, MSNBC next.
God, I love elephants. We're back with our hardball panel. Andrew Mitchell, Patrick Buchanan, Michael Smerconish, and Mike Gowan. I want everybody to tell me something I don't know about one thing, and that is, who gave the great concession speeches last night? Smerconish?
Santorum.
Tell me why, because I think you might be right.
I think the guy was humble. I think he was focused. Frankly, I think that he knew that it was coming. And you might say, well, of course, because the polls showed that he was going to get hammered. I never expected that that would be an 18-point race, and I'm awfully close to that situation. But I thought that he struck the appropriate tone and probably helped himself because, you know, he wants to have a future.
What do you think of his kids?
I think they're
that little
handsome.
girl
What do you mean,
crying?
what do you think of their kids?
Well, the only thing that made me feel, I was caught by it because the little kid was crying. The little girl, her face was cracking up. And I do feel for her, but I also feel much more for those police funerals when the kids look like that and people coming back from the war in Iraq.
Well, what are you saying? She had nothing
what
to
I'm
cry
saying
about?
is,
Come
I
on.
think
Her
you got
dad lost his
to
job.
put these things in perspective. And as much as it bothered me, those kids are crying. I do think the war was an issue worth losing a campaign
What if he
over.
was a steel worker and you were out of a job and his kid were crying? Would you be making the same observation?
Look, I'm the kind of guy, an American kind of guy, you know, who worries about Mickey Mantle's bad knees, you know, even though I'm not working. You know what I mean? Okay, I don't claim to be right about this.
Say what you
okay.
will. He's got a close family.
I thought he was great. Santorum was great. I also thought that Harold Ford Jr. gave a powerful speech.
Harold Ford did give a terrific speech, and especially in light of the fact that he made it so close, and he came back, and a lot of us,
didn't he?
We had it down
and here,
12 or
look,
something
let's hear
like
for the
that.
white guys out there. They didn't vote for him, or at least they said they did what they said they were going to do. It was an honest poll.
Sure.
I was, after all these terrible polls where we've had people like Doug Waters supposed to win by 13, wins by 1, people like Tom Bradley supposed, at least the people out there were true to what they were doing.
Well,
They had, and in fact, the
listen.
younger voters out there obviously gave this guy a shot, young
There
white
was,
voters.
there was a hidden Ford vote.
Yeah.
Because he closed that thing from 12 to 3. It didn't go the other way.
It was wonderful, which would lead me to believe, Andrea,
Yeah.
and maybe you too, that this guy's got a future in Tennessee politics.
Oh, I think he does. He's young. He's 36 years old. I think that Ford gave a brilliant speech, concession speech. He was also very moving and affecting even this morning on Imus. I mean,
Women
he's-
love this guy, by the way. I've noticed, not just the one in the commercial, because my
That's
wife
the
was talking
problem,
about it,
Chris.
and
That's the
everybody.
problem.
I'm telling you, every woman I talk to said, "I love this guy."
Well, Santorum also. I mean, I was struck by Santorum. That was a classy speech. He was in front of a crowd that was disappointed and angry. He calmed them down, said, you know, let's give it up. Let's give a shout out for Bob Casey and his children, the family.
If Rick
the
were
child
pro-choice, he'd
with
be a
the-
rock star. I mean, we'd be regarding Santorum in a whole different light if on that issue
there
he had a
were
different
more- there were
position.
other
Let me
issues.
ask
I mean,
Mike
Bob
Gowan here.
Casey-
What was your favorite moment last? I do like concession speeches. I remember some of the best ones. I thought that Ed Brooks up in
wrote some of them.
Massachusetts was one. That was uncalled for. Ed Brooks once said after he lost up there in a race that was all messy because of divorce in his family and an Italian war bride, and he dumped her, and the daughters came after him. It was a real mess, but he said something so classy. He said, I did not cry on the mountain. I will not cry in the valley. It was, in other words, I played this business as a business I have chosen, and defeat comes with it.
Chris, that trade up there with you won't have Richard Nixon to kick around anymore.
That wasn't a concession speech. That was, I'm going to get you bastards. Let me ask you, Mike, we're going to move on to the serious stuff, but I do have an emotional interest in politics, obviously. It is the thrill of victory, the agony of defeat, and with every victory, there's a loss.
Yeah, Chris, at 12:35 this morning on your air, when I was watching Senator Allen speak, I think he knew in his heart that that probably was a concession speech. And, the Republicans are saying today the race goes on, but they know that that is not likely. And you heard the Senator Allen invoking the sort of Jeffersonian terms that he's so fond of, second only to his football terms, talking about representative democracy. And he was gracious there, and it suggests that if this numbers are not working out, that he's not going to be churlish about this. They're not going to drag it out. Right. They're preserving their options, but they're not going to make the party look bad, and they're not going to make Senator Allen look bad.
And Jefferson did say the whole idea of democracy is the willingness to accept a one-vote decision. One vote. It comes down, and you've got to accept that as if it were a unanimous vote. Well, and that's what democracy is, because it's always like that.
That's the difference between what's happening here, what's happening in Virginia, and what's happening in the streets of Baghdad.
But over there, they're not going to accept a close decision because they're not all one people.
Exactly.
And they don't even think they're one people. That is the problem.
Chris, I'll say, if we're talking about performances, the Oscar today would have to go to President Bush, who is probably at the lowest political moment of his life since 1978, when, as you all know, he lost a congressional race. And he went out today and took the first step in reinventing himself with making, as you guys have pointed out very graphically, this tough choice about Secretary Rumsfeld, and no moping. And he went out and he's going to try to be Nancy Pelosi's best friend.
I was going to be nice now, but I'm going to get tough. Let's see it. Let's rip the scab off this baby. Here's a guy who tried to make it on his own as a young kid out of college after going to Harvard Business School and Yale College. And he was trying to make it as a wildcatter, and he didn't make it. A lot of dusters, no money. Then he was taken in by the establishment in Texas. They gave him a baseball team, and they let him sell it, make $17 million or whatever. Here again, he was out there as a wildcatter politically as President of the United States, trying to do it his way. Duster. The Iraq War, it is a duster. There's no oil coming out of that war. Along comes the establishment, Bob Gates from Texas A&M, the old man's buddy. Jim Baker comes along, the old man's partner, to bail out the kid because he went out there on his own as a wildcatter, and it ain't working. Tell me if I'm wrong, Andrea.
Well, the analogy works, but the difference is that they're not just propping up the kid, the President of the United States. It's the country. It's the national interest. And Democrats, as well as Republicans, have an interest in this working. Maybe not the people trying to run in 2008. Maybe it's not in their interest for this to all come together. Right. But I was really struck by the President today. The joke about, the interior decorator for Nancy Pelosi.
Isn't that sexist?
No, he'd made the joke about measuring the drapes and all that.
Would he say that about a rugged guy coming in there? Would he make that joke about Denny Hastert,
the wrestler?
Would he do that? Hey, let's talk about the drapes together.
I don't know, and that's the other thing today.
You're so modern. You're post-feminist. You're beyond all this.
Nancy Pelosi, though, speaking about feminist issues, when we sit and do the coverage on the State of the Union, when Americans, when children, boys and girls, and grown-ups, men and women, look at the State of the Union, the image you're going to see is a woman sitting behind the president.
It's so great because women who are watching, and half the people watching are women, most voters are women, are going to be sitting there watching. Hey, look at her now.
And 16 women in the Senate.
And my friend Paul Pelosi's going to be eaten up because he was sitting up in the women's gallery watching his wife, just kidding, Paul, watching his wife be Speaker of the House.
The truth is, though, Chris, look, the country did not elect Nancy Pelosi. The country rejected the Republicans, rejected the war, rejected Bush. They got Pelosi. Miss Pelosi.
You want to go through it all again, Pat? I want to rip it all up. They didn't choose Ronald Reagan. They didn't like Carter. Come on, we can go all the way back with that stuff.
Let me just say this. The point of it is, Miss Pelosi's going to have a hellish time because she is the focal point of Republican attack in the coming year.
Did they like Richard Nixon when they brought him in '68, or are they just tired of the Democrats' failures?
No, well, a lot of our votes, you're right, in 1972 were anti-McGovern votes. We knew that.
I meant in '68 when they wanted to dump Johnson and the Democrats and Humphrey to bring in Nixon.
Humphrey and Wallace.
It's always a negative process. We try to find a new opportunity.
There was a tremendous base for Nixon inside the Republican Party, always.
Right, and there's a big base for Nancy Pelosi, the Democratic Party, I would bet, if we ever counted it. We'll be right back with our panel and take a look at some of the greatest moments from the past 24 hours. Well, that's kind of a greatest show on earth approach. We're watching Hardball. You're watching it. We're doing it on MSNBC.
From the man who brought fantasy to life comes a hair product born into reality. Beauty has a face, perfection a name. And now, you can experience a shampoo worthy of only one man's name.
Life comes at you fast. Are you ready for retirement? Get ready with Nationwide. Investments, retirement, insurance.
Nationwide is on your side.
Some stores start with a higher regular price, then mark it down and say it's 40% off. At Men's Warehouse, we like to keep our prices low every day. Customers seem to like it too. You're gonna like the way you look. I guarantee it.
The 7th and final season, now on DVD. The end of an era.
You're the future. We're counting on you.
And a new beginning.
You ain't seen nothing yet. He's not gonna know what hit him.
With intriguing extras.
It's been a hell of a ride, though, hasn't it?
The West Wing, the 7th and final season, now on DVD.
Sonicare is a part of good overall health. Its patented technology creates dynamic cleaning action, getting deep between the teeth and along the gum line. Sonicare. Help take care of your body.
Are your IRA investments in harmony with your future? Get them back in balance. At E-Trade, you can find premium investment service and advice and free independent research. Roll over your IRA and be well balanced. Click, call, or visit today.
Last year, Norfolk Southern and its shipping partners took hundreds of thousands of freight loads off the highway. In fact, they've invested millions to convert even more traffic in the coming years. So it's easy to see how the economy won't be the only thing that benefits. Norfolk Southern, the future of transportation.
Turn left.
So left up here.
Is that the new BlackBerry from Sprint?
Yeah, fast downloads, GPS, my calendar. I'd be lost without it.
That's cool.
BlackBerry devices powered by Sprint, now with real-time GPS capability.
So he's really...
Yeah.
So left up here.
Get new BlackBerry devices at Sprint or Nextel stores or call 1-8-SPRINT-BIZ and get on the nation's largest mobile broadband network. Sprint. Power up.
TBS wants you to pick the next very funny superstar. Watch the Sierra Mist Stand-Up or Sit-Down Comedy Challenge, part of the 2006 Comedy Festival in Las Vegas this November. Immediately following the show, log on to TBS.com to vote for your favorite comedian. Don't miss a minute of the Sierra Mist Stand-Up or Sit-Down Comedy Challenge, Friday, November 17th at 10, only on TBS.
Brought to you locally by Monty Shelton Jaguar.
It's time for movies on demand, like having a theater at your command. Hundreds of flicks from A to Z, with Comcast, see them totally free.
Watch them from your couch.
Or in your bed.
And you can eat popcorn out of my head.
Free movies on demand, anytime you want, no need to plan. Free movies on demand.
Watch hundreds of movies free with On Demand from Comcast Digital Cable.
It's Comcastic.
We're back to Harbor. We're also back with our panel. I want to ask everybody here, starting with Michael and then the other Michael. Big moment for you the last 2 days.
President getting rid of Donald Rumsfeld, and hopefully what it said to me is that we're beyond that stage. Do you remember that exchange where the president was asked to enumerate mistakes that he'd made, and he sort of stammered and stood there for a couple of minutes, and that was such a disappointing moment for me. Hopefully today represents a willingness on his part to acknowledge those...
By action.
Absolutely.
Let me go to Mike Allen. Big moment for you the last 48 hours.
Chris, the president walked into the East Room today, and he said, among other things, one of the things he said that he intended to say was, I take responsibility as the head of the party for what happened. And as you know, Chris, the president has very rarely articulated that for whether it's the deficit or Iraq. And it's a step in trying to say that he can transcend the box.
You got to hold those thoughts. Write a column. Why don't you? That's the next time. Thank you, Indra Mitchell, Pat Buchanan, Mike Allen, and Michael Smerconi's Hardball returns tomorrow at 5 and 7 Eastern tomorrow night. We leave you now with a look at some of the greatest moments from election night. For a brief period of late autumn daylight, the power to tax, to regulate, to wage war, to outlaw behavior, all the power of the government leaves Washington and heads back to the citizens, you and me.
The moment of truth is here.
6 seats. That's the number Democrats need to win to take control of the U.S. Senate.
This election tonight, Chris, is going to have a profound effect on the 2008 presidential election.
I saw it. They're going to do it.
Chris Jansing is in Hartford for us this morning. In Stuart, Florida, Richmond, and Virginia.
There's one group of Americans forced to cast their vote by absentee ballot. Richard Engel is in Baghdad.
MSNBC's Monica Novotny is monitoring the political web today.
Let's get right now to Tom Brokaw and Tim Russert and Brian Williams at NBC headquarters in New York.
MSNBC's look at the races to watch and the issues that are driving. This is a race about the Iraq War.
This is a hot issue. It has to do with basic human belief.
You can look at Katrina, and that's the time the president's own party started asking questions about his competence.
The economy has not been listed. It's not been able to crack through Iraq.
Joe Lieberman does win tomorrow. It sends a powerful message to both parties.
Virginia, which is going to be one of the big ones tonight.
I'm as nervous about this one as any race in the country.
You well know at this point in the campaign, everybody's made up their minds. It's about getting the faithful to the polls.
At the end of the day, all of the votes will be in, but will they all be counted?
The FBI is now investigating allegations of voter intimidation and voter suppression.
We now have reports of voting problems in Utah, Florida, Indiana, and Ohio.
2 counties have run out of ballots.
Let's look at the first results of the night.
NBC News projects that Ted Strickland takes back the governor's office for the Democrats after 16 years.
Bob Menendez of upstate New Jersey is the projected winner. Joe Lieberman, running as an independent, having lost the primary, is the projected winner. We've got a blockbuster report to make. NBC now projects that the Democratic Party has taken over the House of Representatives.
We're down to 1 Senate seat that decides who controls the Senate.
It's going to take about 240,000 votes to win this.
All that remains between Republican and Democratic control of the U.S. Senate. What a storyline tonight.
Which of these stories will you be talking about tomorrow? Secretary Rumsfeld, Wheels of the Bus. Wheels of the Bus, Secretary Rumsfeld.
I have benefited greatly from criticism, and at no time have I suffered a lack thereof.
Mr. Rumsfeld quotes Churchill, while Mr. Bush quotes Trump. You're fired.
You can't replace somebody until you know you got somebody to replace him with.
The November surprise turns out to be at the secretary's expense. The new questions, politically, why didn't they do this last week? And will the Democrats throw their newfound weight around about his successor? And how big are they? Montana is finally decided. Jim Webb claims Virginia. Will there be a recount? And what's the count and the amount in the House? And what about Karl Rove's math?
I obviously was working harder in the campaign than he was.
And amid the rush on all sides to appear bipartisan, a little angry reality sneaks through.
I read those same polls, and I believe that I thought when it was all said and done, the American people would understand the importance of taxes and the importance of security.
Guess we're all still morally or intellectually confused.
Think I'm nuts?
Okay, that was kind of gratuitous on our part. But if there's no snark about anybody divorced from reality, plenty about the while you were out story of the week, divorced from Britney Spears. That's right, K-Fed will become FedEx. All that and more now on Countdown. Good evening from New York. This is Wednesday, November 8th, one day after the 2006 midterm elections, and the day the upsets and the realignments of election night were followed by the upset and the realignment at the Pentagon. Our fifth story on the countdown, Donald Rumsfeld steps down right under the oncoming bus, and the Democrats take over the House and almost certainly the Senate. The most tangible evidence of a resounding White House defeat revealing itself today not in any of the election returns, but in the actions of the man who's still there. The president, having twice before been offered the resignation of the defense secretary, Mr. Bush finally accepted it only this morning, only, he says, reluctantly, only after American voters made it impossible to ignore their anger about the war in Iraq. The nominee to replace Rumsfeld, Robert Gates, who served as director of the CIA under the father of the current president and only after the most bitter of confirmation battles. Mr. Rumsfeld making it clear this afternoon in the Oval Office that he does not believe his 6 years of service in the current administration were in any way lacking. The only deficiency, he seems to feel, coming in the ability of the American people to recognize how exemplary the administration's handling of this war has been.
It's been quite a time. It recalls to mind the statement by Winston Churchill, something to the effect that I have benefited greatly from criticism, and at no time have I suffered a lack thereof. The great respect that I have for your leadership, Mr. President, in this little understood, unfamiliar war, the first war of the 21st century. It is not well known, it was not well understood, it is complex for people to comprehend, and I know with certainty that over time the contributions you've made will be recorded by history.
The news of Mr. Rumsfeld's imminent departure breaking just minutes before a grim-faced commander-in-chief met with reporters in the White House East Room, facing up to what can only be called an overwhelming election night defeat.
This is a close election. If you look at race by race, it was close. The cumulative effect, however, was not too close. It was a thumping. But nevertheless, the people expect us to work together. That's what they expect.
You just described the election results as a thumping.
I said the cumulative effect. Make sure. Who do you write for?
The New York Times,
oh, yeah, that's right,
Mr.
yeah.
President.
Let's make sure we get it. The facts. I said that the elections were close. The cumulative effect.
It's a thumping.
Thumping.
And but the results have been
polite way of saying, Anyway, go ahead.
But the results are being interpreted as a repudiation of your leadership style in some quarters. I wonder what your reaction is to that, and should we expect a very different White House? Should we expect a very different leadership style from you in these last 2 years?
And in terms of the election, no question Iraq had something to do with it. And it's tough in a time of war when people see carnage on their television screens. The amazing thing about this election, and which surprised me somewhat, which goes to show I should not try punditry, is that this economy is strong. And a lot of times all fears are decided by the economy. And yet, obviously there was a different feel out there for the electorate. The economy, the good news in the economy was overwhelmed by the toughness of this fight and toughness of the war.
I wanted to ask you about the thumping you took at yesterday's rodeo. You said you were disappointed, you were surprised.
See, there you go.
You said
Rutenberg, you notice that? Taking one.
And that was thumping without a G, correct? I just want to make sure we have it right for the transcript. You said you were surprised, you didn't see it coming, you were disappointed in the outcome. Does that indicate that after 6 years in the Oval Office, you're out of touch with America for something like this kind of wave to come and you not expect it?
I'm an optimistic person. That's what I am. And I knew we were going to lose seats. I just didn't know how many.
How could you not know that and not be out of touch?
You didn't know it either.
A lot of polls showed it.
Well, there was I read those same polls, and I believe that I thought when it was all said and done, the American people would understand the importance of taxes and the importance of security. But people have spoken, and now it's time for us to move on.
The size of the thumping still taking shape as some votes remain to be counted and others likely to remain in dispute. Here's what we know so far. In the House, the Democrats picking up 32 seats, according to our NBC News projections, 17 more than the 15 they needed and hoped for. The new breakdown in that chamber likely to be 234 Democrats, 201 Republicans, no independents. The plus or minus is still 4. The balance of power in the Senate still to be decided officially. The Democrats picking up 5 seats so far. They need 6. NBC News this afternoon reporting the Democrat John Tester, the apparent winner in Montana. He says so, knocking off Republican incumbent Conrad Burns, leaving all eyes on the one race still too close to call tonight officially. Virginia. Democrat Jim Webb holding a 7,200 vote edge over the Republican incumbent George Allen. The ballots still being counted. The possibility of a recount looming and looming large. Democrats are confident Webb will prevail. He claimed victory early this morning. That would give them full and official control of the Senate. Tonight, the Republicans with 49 seats, Democrats 48, plus the 2 independents who have indicated they will caucus, Mr. Sanders and Mr. Lieberman, with the Democrats. Let's call in Mike Allen, White House correspondent for Time magazine, who was at Mr. Bush's news conference in the East Room today. Mike, good evening.
Well, good evening, Keith. And how long do you think it'll be till Secretary Rumsfeld gets his Medal of Freedom?
Yeah, or a talk show somewhere. This is the first question I was asked today by people who are not political insiders. If the president had pulled the trigger on the Rumsfeld resignation on Monday, if not much, much earlier, could it not have made the difference in the outcome of yesterday's election?
That person must have been a Republican, because I can tell you that they feel very strongly that they might well have kept the Senate if the president had done this. And the reason I know that is how apoplectic the campaigns were after the headline that came out of the interview the president did with the wire services last week was Rumsfeld's stay. They said that was absolutely fatal for them. That is stay the course in human form. And as you know, as you've reported on your air many times, there has been a swing, and I think that in the past, the president has viewed it as it would be a concession of failure, or would be viewed as the president acknowledging failure. But it's clear now, anybody who looks at that exit polls can see how big a factor Secretary Rumsfeld was. And Keith, I'll tell you something that surprised me when I started digging into this last week, is the enmity toward Secretary Rumsfeld among people very close to the president. There is obviously an element here of people who are close to the president blaming Secretary Rumsfeld so they don't have to blame the president, just as the president always puts everything off on the commanders. But I will say there's people that are very relieved to have Secretary Rumsfeld go, and they think this is part of turning the page that the president is trying to do and knows he needs to do if these next 2 years are going to be productive at all. What you saw at that press conference, there was the president refusing